Meeting. There's 21 present at the moment.
I think Councillor Gilroy is here, but she's maybe not in the room at the moment. Okay, do we have any declarations of interest? Right, move on to item 3, the minute of the meeting of the 11th of September 2012. Councillor Lever.
The meeting proper, it was agreed at Planning, Housing and Environment that the default position with regard to recording would be that these meetings would be recorded unless there's exceptional circumstances. Is that still the case for this committee?
Yes, Councillor Lever, I'm aware that the meeting will be recorded. Thank you. I'm happy to agree the minute of the 11th of September is correct. Okay, moving on to item 4, cluster working review. The cluster working review was initiated by Education Services in response to a series of factual and strategic issues facing the service over a period of some years. This is a very full report. The evidence has been gathered over an 8-month period and has come from staff and families across the region in face-to-face meetings, a public survey and data gathering. We have a report in front of us. Anne Campbell is here to speak to the report and to answer any questions that members may have. And if she has nothing further to add, I'm happy to open the floor. Councillor McKee. She said no. Sorry.
Sorry, if she's nothing further to add, it might be better if you use a mic as well, so everyone's being recorded, so there's nothing further to add.
Noted. Thank you, Councillor Nicholson. Have you anything further to add?
I have an introduction which I'm happy to share.
Thank you.
Okay. The strategic and factual information contained within 3.1.9 has led Education Services to address the significant challenges facing the service. Whilst the recommendations are challenging and will be unpopular for some, we cannot continue to react to individual situations, respond to every individual parental wish whilst their child's in the system and expect different results. Doing more of the same is the definition of insanity, said Benjamin Franklin. We need to take a bold step to make a proactive strategic change for the next whole generation of children, not just the ones in school right now. The aim of the recommendations are to create stability for families, to help ensure we have the structure to effectively facilitate curriculum for excellence, set in place a system that will nurture the staff we need in future years and meet the breadth of needs of all young people. Based on the evidence gathered, there is something positive for everyone in these recommendations. Families get consistency of learning and teaching, no more head teacher management time, their top priority, and retain their own school. Leaders get time to build staff capacity to meet the needs of all children and to direct the curriculum to nurture confident and successful young people. This allows the service to put in place a succession management plan to cope with imminent retirements and support leaders of the future. And most importantly, young people get access to a broad curriculum with a wide range of peers and staff that will build their confidence and skills to meet the challenges of fast-paced change within their own communities. As was noted at the education seminar, this is not new for Dumfries and Galloway. It works in situations where it is already in place, with parents saying they would not go back. And we need a clear communication strategy for staff and families to be put in place. I hope the rationale and the evidence is robust enough for councillors to agree the recommendations proposed.
Thank you very much for that. And Councillor McKee, did you indicate you would like to speak?
Yes, please, Chair, if you don't mind. The first one of the in 3.1.9, you've got long-term absence of some small school head teachers has significantly impacted on HMIE outcomes over the last year. It's happened for longer than that, with all due respect. I think, and not just in the small schools, the larger primary schools as well. It can have a seriously detrimental effect in there, and I think we need to be interested to see how you intend to address that. But another issue that's been raised quite a bit recently is the operations of the 4 high schools or 4 senior secondary schools in Dumfries, where they're all working at different timetables. And in the recommendations 2.2.1, you're talking about more closely aligning a P7 final term induction dates in secondary schools across the authority to help facilitate effective transition. Could you explain exactly what you're putting in place to overcome that? Are you going to get all the high schools, well, it'll be the high schools across Dumfries and Galloway, not just Dumfries. Are you intending to get them all onto the same timetable? And are you looking, as at the present moment, looking to move youngsters from primary schools to secondary schools in the month of May, June, when they tend to start if they're in S1, they tend to start S2 education before the holidays? So just clarification on those points, please.
Director?
I think, thanks, Chair, just because of the clear links to the second paper, although we won't be discussing the merits and demerits of proposal in the second paper, it's more about consultation, but because of the clear links to the Learning Town agenda, if I could maybe pick up on that one. In Dumfries in particular, the complications around transition and coherence and closer links are greater than in other places. And one of the things that needs to be resolved is the policy conflict that we have between parental choice and the right for a school to try to do really well and therefore, in effect, attract lots of kids to go there, against the difficulty that causes with coherent planning. And that's one of the key issues that needs to be resolved in whatever we do about the Learning Town. Okay? But because the Learning Town, whatever we do about the Learning Town is effectively from 2017-18 onwards, the question then arises is what we do at the moment. And at the moment, we again still have policy conflict there. We've asked head teachers to try to coordinate their information evenings in such a way that it doesn't set up competitive evenings. But on the other hand, we know that many parents like to have the opportunities to go and see different schools, and parental choice exists. So that's just a really complex one, Councillor, which we're trying to get a compromise with. And we know that, for example, a number of schools, I asked them to pair up so that we didn't have 6 different evenings. That was the 4 private secondary schools and the 2 upper Nithsdale schools. And at the moment, then left it to head teachers to agree whatever they were able to agree. And we've got a bit of a compromise with some events on the same evening, but some others being at different times. It's an ongoing issue. It's been there for 30 years in Dumfries, and it's a complication. I don't have a simple answer for it.
Is it on that point? Okay. Mr. Birrell?
Thank you, Chair. I have to say, when I read this report for the first time last week, I found it one of the most astonishing committee papers that I've read in my years sitting in this committee. I want to say, first of all, that I believe, and I think most teachers now believe, in parental choice. Now, when I started teaching and a free parental choice of where to send their children was introduced by the then Conservative government in the mid-1980s, I and most teachers were not in favour of parental choice. We thought that we knew best, and education authorities thought that they knew best about where children should be sent. Now, I actually would like to start at the end of the committee paper in paragraph 6, the governance assurance section. Now, if you read that, Chairman and members, it looks to me as if in producing this report, the Education Department has sent it to itself, its 4 best friends, and I'm glad to see also Father McFadden. They didn't send the report to any teachers' representative bodies. They do not appear to have consulted parent councils. I have to say, I don't know how members here would feel if a decision of the council on a particular issue was reached by surveying members individually, having individual talks with them and asking them to fill out surveys, rather than coming around a meeting and taking a decision, hearing other people's points of views, contrary arguments and so forth. There is nothing within this paper that I can read that looks at ways in which teaching head teachers could be supported in their work. Now, when I first went a teaching practice 30 years ago this month, I remember very much a principal teacher constantly talking to me about his retired head teacher and how wonderful she was. And the reason she was wonderful was that she was always coming up to him saying, "What can I do for you to make your work easier, Mr. Dorian? What can I as the head teacher do? What is this authority doing in order to make the work of teaching head teachers better and manageable?" If 97% of staff in 2 to 6 class schools think that schools should be closed as a solution, what has driven them to this position of despair that this authority has not supported them in their work, that they should feel the best thing that should happen is their school is closed? Now, as to dual zoning, I'd like to talk about that as well, if I may. Dual zoning, if this report is read as it stands, makes it sound as if it's some sort of simple historical accident. In some cases it is. In some cases dual zoning exists because a particular primary school is almost equidistant, or very close to equidistant between secondary schools, and it was considered appropriate, therefore, that parents should have a supported choice as to which of the 2 secondary schools concerned is the one that they want to send their children to. I see absolutely no reason why in instances like that, that choice should be withdrawn. The suggestion that it makes everybody equal, if everybody only has one school to which they're zoned, is not one sustained by the facts, or not one sustained by the actual opportunities that parents want. If you live in a primary school, if your child goes to a primary school that is 4 miles from the nearest secondary school and the next nearest is 16 miles away, say, why would you be wanting dual zoning? Right? It's the people who are closest to being affected that at the moment have that opportunity. And what if you live in Dumfries? In Dumfries, for most parents, if they want to, they'll be able to carry on sending their children where they want. That'll be easy for them. It's not so easy in a rural area where the choice is only possible if transport is provided. Sometimes the school transport is the only public transport that would be available to take their child somewhere. I would like to know what this authority is doing to see that jobs like these of head teachers in small schools are made more attractive. Are we going to COSLA? Are we going to LNCT saying we need to get improved conditions of service, improved pay for people prepared to take on work of that kind, to support work in this rural area? I don't believe we're the only authority in a situation like that. This paper is trying to shut down discussion on an important issue. Teachers' associations and parent councils are going to be gone to after today and told, well, you're going to be consulted about how we do this. We're not going to ask you if you want it done. The Education Committee has already taken that decision before they asked you, parent councils, what you think. I think this approach is disgraceful, and I apologise for saying that.
Thank you, Mr. Birrell. I understand that you're very passionate about it, and thank you very much for your comments. I think the important thing is that this has been the culmination of a huge amount of work by Anne and her team, and has widely consulted and talked to schools right across the region. And obviously what's in front of members at the moment is simply the first stepping stone to the possibility of doing things slightly differently in Dumfries and Galloway. And the report that will come in May will have much greater detail. Obviously unions and such like will be fully consulted, and any consultation that we do have will have to meet the national standards for consultation anyway. I have 3 more speakers. Mr. Birrell, briefly.
Certainly briefly. Can I point out, and I apologise if I sounded intemperate there, I feel about this very strongly. Can I point out that the recommendations today are to make this policy today? What is being asked to be consulted on thereafter is how it is implemented. Can I just reiterate that the representative bodies of parents and teaching staff have not been consulted.
Thank you for that. And when we come to the recommendations, I think some of even our members may have a few little changes to make as well. We move on. Councillor Carson.
Thank you, Chair. There is an amendment I would like to propose for the recommendations at 2.2.3 regarding the small schools linked headship. In bullet point 1, it suggests the phasing in of link headships. However, it would appear that is stating that it's going to happen before the consultation period. Can I suggest that it's reworded that a further report being brought back to the Education Committee in May 2013 providing outcomes of this consultation, detailing associated cost benefits and recommendations with provisional implementation timelines for consideration, and considers the phasing in, rather than suggest that the phasing in is going to be done before the consultation. So in effect, turn those paragraphs round, so it would come back to the committee for discussion where it merits.
Director.
Thanks, Chair. First, there may be further detail asked of Anne. I think I need to respond to Mr Burrell's personal view that it's a disgraceful approach that we've taken. I think I really need to try and say something on behalf of the person that's brought forward the report there. If you look on page 18, there's a whole range of over a year consultation processes that we've gone through. And we've brought this paper in good faith. My understanding is that 97% of teaching heads said that they found it virtually impossible to do both teach very, very well and run a school. And it would have been disingenuous if Anne had brought forward proposals that bucked that. So in good faith, I think, we've tried to bring forward proposals which are always up for members to agree or disagree with, but based on having a year's worth of going out and talking to people that were out there, we recognised that we weren't saying to parents, do you want the following? Because there are 5 things there that are actually mutually exclusive. We've found it, based on evidence, impossible to say we'll keep all of our schools open, we'll also be able to recruit easily, we'll also get continuation of teaching, we will also have teaching heads that are able to do the job, etc., etc. Those are not, some of those are mutually exclusive. We've given professional advice on what decisions that we think members should take about long-term strategic views. There's scope within the paper for papers coming back. I accept Mr Burrell's point that the recommendation did suggest that we move in principle to phasing out of linked headships, so that we're going out to talk about how one might do that and how long it might take. But it is always up to members to make decisions. But if you were to go through all of the papers that are there in the background, I'm not certain that anybody would have come forward with a paper that looked particularly different to that. So I want to just say that, I want to say that I don't believe that it's a disgrace in which the way the paper was brought forward for your consideration.
Thank you for that clarification. Anne, do you have anything to add at this stage?
I would just like to say that we consulted widely. We had 28 face-to-face consultation meetings. We had a public survey where we had 1/3 of all parent councils put in collective responses, and we gathered a huge amount of data, everything from absence rates to views on the size of classrooms and the ability to meet the entitlements of curriculum for excellence. The reason that 2 to 6 class teachers talked about closing one class schools, not their own schools, but one class schools, was because they felt that there were such few peer numbers in the classrooms that it was not appropriate for children to access the broad curriculum on that basis. And they were really concerned that the resource was going into such small schools and was not taking a strategic position across the authority. There were 3 teaching head teachers who said that they wanted to continue doing that job. Everybody else, without question, overwhelmingly said it was untenable and that they did not feel that they could direct the curriculum, build the capacity of their staff and teach appropriately in classroom. This was an extensive survey and an extensive process in order to gather views and to create the recommendations based on the evidence.
Thank you very much for that. Councillor McKee, did you have a point on that issue?
Just on this, Chair, I'm sorry to interrupt, but could you clarify where we get Programme Office? Some of us have never heard of it. There used to be SharePoint sites, and now we're getting this highlighted below available to members on Programme Office. Never heard of it.
Councillor McKee, it's a council-wide SharePoint site that all officers and members can access, and it tracks the progress of any project, which is usually linked to Covalent as well. So it's easy enough for you to give all the members the link to that, so you can look at the progress of this project. I believe it's open to all council users.
But it's changed from SharePoint to Programme Office.
It is a SharePoint-based site, but it's called Programme Office.
Fancy
terminology.
You might have told us, but if you could send us that link, it'd be greatly appreciated.
Yeah,
Thank you very much.
I think you've raised a good point, and we've had issues with this before, and we'll ensure that members get the link to that site, because there is an awful lot of very detailed information in there, and I think, you know, if members are interested in looking at it, they really should be able to access it easily. Councillor Dempster?
Thanks, Chair. I've missed a term in this committee, so it may be that I've missed some of the decisions that have been made. For clarification only, I thought when a school roll fell below 25 pupils, it was automatically subject to a review anyway and brought back to committee. That's for clarification only. The other point is that this arrangement for cluster schools and how we deal with it isn't new. In the term before last, we spoke about having business managers because there was a recognition that teachers were particularly skilled in one aspect, and that was education, and not necessarily business managing. And we had looked at a pilot whereby we could maybe introduce a business manager and see if that ran the school without the need for a head teacher to do so, and freed up head teachers for that purpose. And I think that was a good idea. And where that went, I don't know, but that's just another point. The real point I was wanting to come back to was one that Councillor McKee raised right at the outset. I'm concerned about these information evenings because it's been brought to my attention that allegedly, and only allegedly, some schools use an information evening as a recruitment scheme to attract pupils from out with the school they're zoned to. And I think we need to have a situation imposed on schools where if they have an information evening, it must be in conjunction with the adjoining school, so that it's not seen as an opportunity to take pupils away, because we have a situation where some school could be hemorrhaging pupils. As a result, the number of teachers drop because it's all related to the number of pupils attending the school. And by doing so, we're actually doing one school a very, very bad or a very disservice in allowing them to particularly compete against each other to see who can attract the most parents with pupils to go to these schools that are with their own. So I'd want to see us putting a marker down that schools must, no encourage them to do so, but must have information and parent evenings on the same night to remove that suggestion that there may be a recruitment drive being conducted by some schools that would most definitely have a detrimental effect on their adjoining and neighbouring schools.
Thank you very much for that. And can you give clarification on what triggers a review? And I think as well, just maybe an explanation, because within the recommendations at 2.2.1, I think it covers a number of the issues that Councillor Dempster has raised.
At the minute, there's no policy or programme of school closure. When a school reaches 19 pupils or less, it becomes a one-teacher school. So there is one class from primary 1 to 7. There is no process to review at the minute, and that's the national government has asked for a moratorium whilst they conduct a small schools review process. And the results of that were supposed to come forward in August, but will now not come until December because of a situation in the Western Isles where there was an attempt to close a school without going through the due process. So that's not the situation in Dumfries and Galloway. And one thing that parents were very clear to us was that regardless of how you do it, please keep all of our schools open, which again is why it's contained within this recommendation that we do that. In terms of transition, there are a number of issues. There are transition events and there are induction events. And what we're asking schools to do is to hold their induction events in a set period of time, so that in a primary school, if there are children going to 4 different schools into secondary, that there's not so much disruption in primary. So that's why we've asked for those to be in the same period. Transition events can happen throughout the year, and that's part of parental choice, and it's a huge issue for primary schools to manage that.
Thanks, Chair. I suppose that's what 2.2.1 is about bringing back guidelines to you for your approval or otherwise in terms of transition. You can see the complication. We've heard a really quite impassioned view from yourself, Councillor Dempster, and others about not having competitive evenings. We've had an impassioned view from Mr Birrell about the right for parental choice and for a school to present itself. It's a difficult issue. I suppose what we would be saying as an education department is, because Curriculum for Excellence is about planning 3 to 18, that what we would like to see happening from a professional point of view is parental choice, but make a 3 to 18 choice. Don't make a 3 to 12 and then make a decision halfway through choice. That's the complication around that. But it's difficult. It's a difficult issue.
Thank you
Chair,
for that clarification.
Apologies for interrupting, but there's a director saying he will bring us back a further paper on what we might do to try and formalise all sorts of different alternatives so that we can decide how to do, because I don't think we can leave this just hanging in the air indefinitely. It's no fair on pupils, it's no fair on parents, and it's certainly no fair on schools and head teachers, teaching staff that look to a good cross range of pupils and across range of subjects as well, and that is affected by the numbers that actually attend the school.
Chair, yeah. If you look at 2.2.1, the last part of it says that these guidelines would be reported back to the Education Committee for approval on completion. In addition to that, over the page, what we're asking is that we go out and start to consult with staff, parent councils and unions about a management of change programme. Now, although part of that would have been about the question of phasing in and what sort of timescale would be for link headship, it would contain issues, all of the issues that are here. So we'll be coming back in May with a further report containing all of these issues.
Thank you very much, though. I think it's an important issue, definitely. Councillor Gilroy.
Thank you. It's been a very interesting debate, and I'm going back to what Councillor Carson has proposed with regards to 2.2.3 and the first bullet point, which I would absolutely agree with. I think the way around that has been phrased is unfortunate, because I have 2 schools in my ward that are small schools and are undergoing the idea of cluster management, and the parent councils are, of both of them, are not happy. I think, consultation is all well and good, but consultation by the very word implies that if you're going out to parent council, for argument's sake, that they would have an opportunity to influence policy within our education authority, because they are being consulted. If it's information, that's a different thing. So I would ask that if you are going out for consultation, that it is properly done, and if there are genuine, real concerns, that they are considered for these schools. I'm talking particularly here about Borg and Twynham, because they are in my ward. They're feeling disengaged at the moment because they think this is a done deal because of the phrasing of the recommendations today. And I would just like to remind members and the director here that the Parent Involvement Act of 2006 provides a framework for ensuring that parents have the opportunity to express their view and have these taken into account on policy matters affecting the education of their children. And that is paramount, and I would like to see that that is put in here, and that for those schools that are having genuinely real, they've done surveys, they don't want it. Now, maybe it is part of an information thing as well, and I'd be very happy to have a meeting with them, and perhaps Anne or something come along, and we can explain what cluster headship is all about, because perhaps it's just the fact that they don't fully understand the implications and the good points, and perhaps from their point of view, the not so good points. But I am genuinely concerned that the word consultation will not be used in the proper way here, and I would like assurance that it will be.
Thank you for that, Councillor Gilroy. I think it's a very important point and one which hopefully Anne will be able to clarify. And if you could also clarify how we will consult perhaps with the parent councils of schools that could potentially be affected by these changes.
As part of the whole consultation process, we spoke to the schools that are currently linked. We have 11 schools across the authority that are currently linked. And this was a really sore process for them to begin with because they didn't really understand what the implications were. And I think that's the issue rather than the reality of it. Because what's happened in those schools is that parent councils have now asked for these arrangements to be made permanent because they won't go back. And parents have said, we will not go back because they feel that their children are getting a much, much richer experience, a broader experience, and it's growing their confidence. So that's one aspect. I think it is about familiarisation and understanding what the benefits are. And we need to do that with parents. We need to do that. If this is agreed today, we need to go out and consult properly, as you say, which I hope we have done already. But we will go out and talk directly to parent councils who have concerns and those who are quite happy so that they can understand fully. We would like to invite parents from the parent councils that are happy with the situation to come and explain with us. So that's one aspect. I beg your pardon, I can't remember the other one. Is it the consultation?
It's just that they will have the opportunity to influence policy, because that is what, I mean, if you want to have parent councils, you have to make them feel that their job is worthwhile. Otherwise, you end up with them being disengaged and uninterested. Mm-hmm.
Well, one of the strong things that the staff said was that we need to consider closing schools. And one of the strong things that parents said was, please don't close our schools. And we have listened, and they are affecting policy because we're not intending to close any schools. So this is a direct example of where their voice has been heard.
Thank you for that. I have 3 more speakers. Councillor McCone.
Thanks, Chair. It's just an observation with regard to non-teaching head teachers. I do not feel that it is good educational practice for head teachers to do no teaching whatsoever. I think that when you have a situation like that, that is when totally unrealistic demands are made on teaching staff. And I would like to feel that if changes take place, there will be considerable opportunities for the head teachers to continue some teaching practice in the classroom.
Anne?
There is an opportunity for that to happen, and it does in fact happen currently where head teachers are non-teaching. They choose to cover the RICT cover, the non-class contact time cover, and it allows them to get into every class in their school, to be able to keep a check on the learning and teaching that's happening, and to be able to get to know the children in depth. So there is a process for that to continue to happen.
Chair, could I also mention in that, just for clarification, that where we have non-teaching heads, it means that the teaching staff, there's less demands on them because they're actually able to concentrate on a class full time. And where we've got arrangements already, because of backfill, instead of the teachers that are there maybe teaching half of the week, with the head teacher taking the other half of the class, we've got full-time appointments. So in fact, in general terms, where you go to non-teaching heads, it's clearer for the teaching staff because of continuity with the one class. That's just a clarification.
Thank you for that. Councillor Wiper.
Thank you, Chair. It's really just to touch on a point that has already been raised by Councillor Councillor Carson, and Councillor Gilroy. It's about the non-teaching heads and consultations. I'd really just want to reiterate that if you're having consultations, you need to take note of what people are saying. I have here, like Councillor Gilroy, the emails from the chair of Twynham Primary Parent Council, who in a survey, they had 79% of people said no to non-teaching heads. And from Borg, they say that the consultations are just being lip service and the strategic decisions have already been made. I think it's really important that if you have a consultation, you need to take heed or there's absolutely no point. Good.
No, I think that's universally agreed. I have 3 more speakers, Councillor Nicholson, Councillor McClune and then Councillor Marshall, and then I intend to move to recommendations.
Or did I not get you?
Oh, sorry, Councillor Lever, can't leave him out. Councillor Nicholson.
Thank you, Chair. I think most of the points have been raised, and I think Mr Birrell made quite a few relevant points about the consultation and about the main people in this, about the pupils and how it affects them, and how the parents and parental choice is whether or not this consultation process that's taken place seems from the officer to be done in some kind of manner. It obviously lacks clarity about what it's actually achieving, and it obviously lacks the important parental input to that in a meaningful manner. On the paper itself, and one of the things I would disagree with Mr Birrell, and he said about the, it might be okay for schools in dual zoning in towns, because, it might be equidistant or whatever, like, and a different matter. I understand that as well, but dual zoning in towns is important as well. And it might have different effects. It's fine saying parity of access to all, but, parity in different areas within towns on an economic and a financial basis might not be equal. So therefore they would have different costs for people, for example, in Lincluden, if they have to go, it would actually take away parental choice through a financial burden for them to go to another school. So there's different things within that that might be worth exploring within. And I don't know, I think that there is an obvious need for further communications and consultation on this.
Thank you for that, Councillor Nicholson. I think that's exactly what the recommendations are asking for today, to allow them to further develop the concept and bring it back to members for an absolute decision in March of next year at the earliest. Councillor McLoone.
Thanks, Chair. A bit like Monty Python's, I'm going to go in something completely different. The recommendation at 2.2, the second bullet point, is regarding the further consider of catchment areas due to changing demographics across the region being considered and reported to the Education Committee in 2014. While understanding about the difference in demographics, I have a personal interest in one village in my area that's not really got anything to do with demographics. There's a group of parents who think that the village was put into the wrong catchment area due to social and cultural differences with the school that they were put into when the school was closed in 2007. And I was just wondering, is that being addressed, or is it being addressed as part of this consideration that's going to report after 2014?
Director?
My understanding, and Anne can maybe clarify this, is that I think we recognise that settling on what we're going to do about cluster working, linked headships or not, needed to be addressed before any further looks at catchment changes. The statutory process required by HMIE and others, where you close a school, also includes where you want to relocate a school, for example. It also includes where you change the transfer policy from primary to secondary. So it's a really long and complex process. And by and large, I think we would probably have suggested that that wouldn't be done catchment by catchment, but more an overarching look at whether we wanted to change the map somewhat. So our expectation at this stage, or advice to this committee, would be if you want to change catchment, it would be looking at an overarching view after 2014. But it's clearly for members to make decisions.
Would you like to come back in, Councillor McClellan?
Yeah, so literally what I tell my parents is you're going to have to wait after 2014 to get the village moved from one catchment area to another. Is that?
Unless this committee decides that we want to relook at catchments, because my understanding is it's this committee is delegated to consider catchments. So unless you decide as a committee that you want to start looking at catchments now, then I'm presuming that would be the answer, but it's for members to decide.
Okay, thank you. I'm aware that a catchment exercise is an enormous exercise. I can't remember the last time it was done, but it was fairly recently.
86.
Sorry? No, of course I can't. Of course I can't. Councillor Marshall. Sorry.
Could I just clarify that when, although the catchment exercise was carried out in 1986, I think what you're referring to is where a school has closed and the local area committee has determined which school it should therefore the pupil should then go to, which is a slightly different situation, I think.
Okay, briefly, Councillor McClung.
Yeah, thanks. You're absolutely right. The area committee recommended and it was passed at the next education committee. But I'm just trying to clarify is if parents have a problem with the catchment area their village is in, there is no way of them actually getting their village reviewed as being in the wrong catchment area unless we do the whole region.
Fundamentally, I think yes. Yes.
To some extent that's true because the challenge there is that although a group of parents at any given point in time for their kids might want a different catchment, it impacts on the other catchments next door. So I don't think it can be done in isolation, probably. But again, it's for this committee to take that forward and when another complicated and high-level debate, I think.
Thank you. Councillor Marshall?
Yeah, thanks. It's just a point on 3.1.9. It's the third bullet point. It states that, you know, all the head teachers in civic primary schools have the multiple role of teaching, managing staff and directing the curriculum. What it doesn't kind of mention there is, you know, also the head teacher normally has responsibility for estate management of the school and its grounds, budget management, and also is normally the responsible person for health and safety. So I just wondered if that had been figured into this.
I think the multiple role of head teachers, although I've been explicit about those, it's the holistic role that head teachers are having to fulfil on a daily basis that is causing them to think that it is untenable. And this is precisely about the well-being of staff that this proposal has been brought forward, that we are trying to eliminate that in the enormity of the task, because you're absolutely right, they are responsible for everything in that school on a daily basis, and it's not manageable.
Okay, we have final speaker, Councillor Lever, and then I intend to move to recommendations.
Thank you, Chair. Well, quite a lot of what I was going to say has been said, but I think it's been raised this programme office. Obviously, a lot of the background papers are in programme office, and looking around, I don't think anybody in the chamber was aware. I think the director might fall within that what programme office was, and therefore to be able to actually drill down and see what the consultation was, I haven't been able to do it. It may be a lot of things are in there which I might be about to suggest, and I agree with Mr. Burrell about the people who've actually been incorporated. I couldn't work out why Reverend McFadden had been singled out for consultation and nobody else within the committee. There may be a perfectly valid reason for that. But I do have concerns from what Mr. Burrell said about the lack of consultation with the teacher associations and also with the parent councils. And I think what some of the Tory members have said about parent councils coming to them and raising concerns, I think what we really need to do is to actually defer agreeing to anything at this stage until such time as we've had the chance of further consultations to come forward. I mean, we don't need to defer it for a long time. We've got a meeting in January. Why not just defer this for agreement until January to allow representation to be included from teachers' associations, trade union sides and parent councils, so we can have the full background and see where their concerns are, and also to allow members to look at these background papers, which we haven't been able to do to date.
Thank you, Councillor Lever. I'm assuming that that's a motion to defer. I think we had a proposal earlier on to change recommendations. I'm quite happy to go through these recommendations if members are happy to do so, including the change that Councillor Carson made. I think we do need to make a decision and give the Education Department some strategic direction as to how we take this forward. It is going to be a very big piece of work. We still do have a huge amount of consulting to do. And in the meantime, we can look at all the background papers that are held on various SharePoints and the such like, which will help to inform our decision-making come March. But I do think that we need to give a very clear steer to the Education Department to take forward the principle of this and allow them to further develop and consult. And I think any delays in that just causes an unnecessary delay. So I would propose to look down through the recommendations one by one, and I'm happy to move that as an amendment. Okay, so we have Claire, would you like to summarise? Rob seconded, yeah.
Chairman, you have a motion on the table from Councillor Lever, seconded by Councillor Nicholson, to defer consideration of the recommendations in the report pending further consultation with head teachers, parent councils, trade unions, and allow members the opportunity to access the council programme office for further information.
It was Teachers Association.
The amendment by yourself, Chairman, seconded by Councillor Davidson, is to go through the recommendations one by one. Is that clear?
Okay, we move to the vote.
Chairman, motion or amendment?
Amendment.
Councillor Davidson. Amendment. Councillor Brodie. Councillor Carruthers. Councillor Carson. Councillor Dempster. Councillor Diggle. Councillor Gilroy. Councillor Yen. Councillor Lever. Councillor McClung. Councillor McComb. Councillor McKee. Councillor Marshall. Councillor Nicholson. Councillor Nichols not present. Councillor Stitt. Councillor Witts. Councillor Wiper. Mr McQuiston. Reverend McFadden. Canon Paisley. There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 votes for the motion. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 votes for the amendment and 1 abstention. The amendment's carried.
Thank you very much, Claire. I think then we move to the recommendations. I think it's important to go down through these one by one and not take them on block and ensure that all members are happy and comfortable. There's an awful lot of information in the recommendations. So if we move to 2.1, are we happy to note the factual information and strategic considerations highlighted in section 3.1.9? Agreed? 2.2, are we happy to agree initially to the transition activity at 2.2.1? Councillor Lever? Okay, so, all right, okay, so we have a, are you just going to go down through all of them and just defer all of them?
Sorry, Chair, you've decided to go through them one by one, so we'll make our recommendations.
Okay, I had hoped that we would have had a mature debate about it, and maybe if members had individual concerns on the recommendations, we could have tweaked them, but if you wish to just propose deferral, that's fine.
Happy we defer them in block.
Sorry?
We defer agreeing in block.
On block, we've already had that vote. Yeah. Okay, right, so are we happy to agree 2.2.1? Sorry? Do we need another?
Yeah, there's a motion being put forward by Councillor Lever and a seconder on that 2.1 now, which is different. You know, so different from a motion. A motion the last time was to defer all. We're deferring 2.1 now, so it's a motion and by Councillor Lever, and I'm seconded that.
Okay, I'll seek some governance advice because I thought we'd already agreed to go down through the recommendations and the deferral fell.
No, the motion was to defer the block, defer them all. Now, the motion is to defer 2.1.
Chairman, there's a motion by Councillor Lever, seconded by Councillor Nicholson, to defer decision on 2.2.1, well, 2.2 incorporating 2.2.1, is that correct? The amendment by yourself, Chairman, seconded by Councillor Gilroy, is to agree 2.2 incorporating 2.2.1. Motion defer, amendment agree. Is everyone clear? Chairman?
Amendment.
Councillor Davidson? Councillor Brodie? Councillor Carruthers? Councillor Carson, Councillor Dempster, Councillor Diggle, Councillor Gilroy, Councillor Yen, Councillor Lever, Councillor McClung, Councillor McComb, Councillor McKee, Councillor Marshall, Councillor Nicholson, Councillor Stitt, Councillor Witts, Councillor Wiper, Mr McQuiston, Reverend McFadden, Canon Paisley. There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 votes for the motion. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 votes for the amendment.
The amendment is carried. Thank you. We move to 2.2.2 dual zone schools and catchment delineation. I'm happy to move them as is. Councillor Lever, who seconded? Councillor Gilroy got that one.
I'm losing track.
I know. We'll give you a moment to catch up and then we'll move to the vote.
I think it's confusing whoever gets in first. Chairman, this time the motion is by yourself, seconded by Councillor Gilroy, to agree 2.2.2 and the associated bullet points. The amendment is to defer. So the motion is to agree the amendment to defer. Is everyone clear on that? Chairman?
Motion.
Councillor Davidson? Councillor Brodie? Councillor Carruthers? Councillor Carson? Councillor Dempster? Councillor Diggle? Councillor Gilroy? Councillor Yen? Councillor Lever? Councillor McClung? Councillor McComb? Councillor McKee? Councillor Marshall? Councillor Nicholson? Councillor Stitt? Councillor Witts? Councillor Wiper? Mr McQuiston? Reverend McFadden? Canon Paisley? There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 votes for the motion, 6 for the amendment.
Thank you. So the motion is carried and we agree 2.2.2 as is. Moving to 2.2.3, Councillor Carson wished a slight change to that particular recommendation to ensure that the consideration of the consultation very much takes precedence over any agreed principle of linked headships. And I think he suggested that we move bullet point 1 to sit below bullet point 3 and link it. I can't remember your wording, Councillor.
Currently, it's asking us to agree to phasing in of linked headships. I propose that that paragraph is placed after the final paragraph and put for consideration, which will obviously take place after the consultation.
I think I would add to that as well that instead of agreeing, I think that we should probably say agree in principle. I don't want it to be set in stone that we have agreed to something, pre-consultation. So I think the agree should read agree in principle. And otherwise, I'll get clear to read that back in a moment. Councillor Lever? Okay, thank you. I'm happy to second Councillor Carson.
Who's seconding you, Councillor Lever? Oh, Chairman, the motion by yourself, seconded by Councillor Davidson? Carson, sorry. No. Is to agree 2.2.3 in principle today with the amendment at bullet point 1 that be subject to further consultation and brought back to the Education Committee in May 2003 regarding linked headships. Is that correct?
Yes, it's to move that paragraph so it links to
bullet point 1 links with bullet point 3.
Absolutely.
So that's asking for deferral of that one paragraph. After the consultation.
Chair, you're agreeing in principle.
No, we're agreeing in principle. Would you like me to read it out as I understand it? Okay. A further report being brought back to Education Committee in May 2013, providing outcomes of this consultation, detailing associated costs, benefits and recommendations, provisional implementation timeline for consideration, and agreeing in principle the phasing in of linked headships and consequent phasing out of the position of teaching head teacher over a defined period to be agreed by committee post-consultation. Is that as I understood it? Yes?
So it's being deferred on the committee decision, in other words?
It's allowing them to do the work. It's not hampering the work to be done. But we make the ultimate decision in March. Yeah, we make the ultimate decision in March. No. Okay, I think we have a motion amendment again. Or have you agreed this time? Are we happy to agree with that wording? No.
You've agreed with us in one point, but the other point not, so our motion still stands.
Will you propose an amendment then?
Well, it has been.
Okay, that's fine. Move to the vote.
Chairman, the motion by yourself, seconded by Councillor Carson, is to agree in principle 2.2.3 with the amendment at bullet point 1 to be linked to bullet point 3 as you read out earlier on. The amendment by Councillor Lever, seconded by Councillor Nicholson, is to defer the 2.2.3 in general. So the motion is agree in principle with that amendment. The motion is to agree in principle with the amendment at bullet point 1, and the motion, getting myself mixed up here. The amendment is to defer the whole decision. Chairman.
Motion.
Councillor Davidson. Councillor Brodie. Councillor Carruthers. Councillor Carson. Councillor Dempster. Councillor Diggle. Councillor Gilroy. Councillor Yen. Councillor Lever. Councillor McClung. Councillor McComb. Councillor McKee. Councillor Marshall. Councillor Nicholson. Councillor Stitt. Councillor Witts. Councillor Wiper. Mr McQuiston. Reverend McFadden. Karen Paisley. The motion is successful by 15 votes to 6.
Thank you very much. We now move on to item 5, Dumfries Learning Time. Thank you very much, Anne, for your time. We have a report in front of us. It's an update on the progress that we have today. We have received other reports to the Education Committee on the concept of Dumfries Learning Town. And I see it as a report for agreement to extend the timeline and to look at the process and the consultation rather than the merits and demerits of the options. And obviously covers how we should work to the national standards of consultation model and gives the overall timeline. I'm very aware that members have received an email, I think, from an anonymous source. I did pass this email to the director, and I think it would just be sensible at this stage to allow the director maybe to have a few words on that before I open up the floor to members to ask any further questions on the report, if members are happy with that. No dissent? Okay.
Okay, thanks, Chair. I wasn't entirely certain whether all members of the Education Committee or all councillors had received the anonymous letter or not.
No.
It may only be for one group, in which case it's probably not appropriate to speak. But I don't know. Well, basically, there was an anonymous letter from signed a teacher, which has gone to a number of people in this Education Committee, and I just wanted, it was a wee bit disconcerting, I think, for members and certainly for me, and I wanted to just reassure people that the kind of key points in it were that the person felt it had to be anonymous in case by speaking out against the Learning Town it would affect their employment, and I wanted to just be absolutely clear that we're asking teachers to express freely and clearly their views over a period of time, and indeed at 4 consultation meetings that are taking place over the next couple of weeks. It also highlighted that the first had heard about the Learning Town,
Chair, I think this is inappropriate in the moment because, you know, I have no knowledge about what somebody, I can't make a judgment, I can't, you know, I can't...
That's absolutely fine, which was why I asked at the start, did members receive the email, and you didn't pipe up. I think, as I say, we have a report in front of us. The Director's very happy to take any questions on the report, and at the moment I have Mr Birrell and Councillor Wiper. Mr Birrell.
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to say on behalf of staff that we are very happy with the consultation process that the Director is now establishing with us, and think that it will enable us to reach a very fruitful discussion and outcome on the issue.
Thank you very much for that. Councillor Wiper.
Thank you, Chair. I would just like to say that this letter, this email that was received, I think it should be passed on to all members of the committee because it really raises some very valid and in-depth points coming from a different point of view than the committee. I mean, it's a teacher's point of view and teachers' points of view, but a whole range of issues about why this new school is appropriate, why it's an advantage to have primary and secondary teachers in the same building, transport
Councillor
problems.
Wiper, I think at this stage, because not
I'm
all
only
members...
highlighting a lot of issues, and I think it really should be passed on to everyone.
No, I appreciate that.
Chair, again, without highlighting specifically that letter because not everybody has it, just by way of giving reassurance, if I can echo Mr Birrell's words earlier, as part of the consultation, we've now extended it into June and possibly till October, as we know. Teachers, among others, will have a really good opportunity over the coming weeks and months to input. I think very significantly, the issues that are being raised by some teachers about concerns are the very issues that are the terms of reference for teacher and union working groups that are being set up. The parent body of that group is led and will be chaired by the LNCT, and that's, I think, partly what Mr Birrell is referring to. We've got a working group set up. We'll have further working groups set up to look at all of the issues that are being set out. Those issues have been set out before and are well recognised, and those are the very issues that need to be considered over a long period of time. And we've got a mechanism to do that across our teachers and union representatives and others over a significant period of time. I think what's possibly I would say about the consultation process, you know, if we had been looking at the engagement and voice agenda about highest standards of community engagement and been looking at the number of activities that will take place between now and the Christmas and then the activities that we can shape after Christmas, in all normal circumstances we might have felt that this was a really good consultation process that's set up. I think some external events have and timings have possibly put a mindset there which says that it isn't a full consultation. You can see very, very clearly here that it is.
Thank you for that clarification. Councillor Lever.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I'm glad that we're kicking off the consultation progress in seriousness now, because I mean, under the initial proposals, this committee would have been agreeing which option we were going to go down, and effectively we're at the start of the consultation period. And I think there was a very useful consultation arranged by the Nithsdale Area Committee at the Cairndale, and that brought forward a mixed group, I think. But I think there were some very important points made there in terms of what information we're working on, etc. I've still got concerns, and I mean, I was at Heath Hall Parent Council meeting the other night, and this was raised, the Learning Town, and some people actually said, well, what's the point in us making a submission? The decision's already been made, and the same was said at Heath Hall Community Council. So I think we need to get round that perception that we are going to go down the option of the 15+ school, that all options are still on the table. And with regard to that, I think we really need to put more flesh on the bones of certainly option one, because I think at the July meeting we asked for more information to come forward in terms of costings with respect to refurbishing the 4 current secondary schools, and we still don't have that. That isn't within that report. Now, I see a bid was made on the 27th of July 2012 to effectively invest in 5 schools. That would be the 15+ plus the 4 existing secondaries. I can't remember this committee giving any agreement to that bid going forward. I don't know what the bid was, what the terms were, etc. So what the Labour group would like to see is the that bid, a copy of that bid, and the response from the Scottish Government in terms of that. It seems to say that they rule out any investment in refurbishing the 4 existing schools, but they would invest in the senior phase school. And I assume that's the full 30 million they're going to invest in that school. So we would like a copy of the documentation pertaining to that. With option 1, I think that's expanded somewhat. It now says involvement with other services. I take that means working more closely with the higher education, the further education in the Crichton campus at the moment. But I think you do need to make that clear to people when you go out to consultation. That isn't expanded. It isn't a status quo, has been said in the past. It's, if you like, it's a status quo plus. And as far as we're recognising that education is moving on, but we're still sticking with the kernel of the 4 education establishments where they are, but we're expanding beyond that. We still haven't had a detailed timetable as where all these consultation meetings are taken. I mean, it was agreed that the timetable would be detailed enough to allow us to go along to a specific school or a specific site at a certain time and a certain date, so we could actually sit in with a listening brief in terms of that. I know in here it says that in some instances that meetings will take place at a certain place, but it gives the date but not the time, etc. So I think we do need to have more details in terms of that. Give me a moment. Quickly go through the notes. And I think there's also a perception out there that the director has made his decision on which route he wants to go down. We really need to think about how we take this forward and try to dispel that. Well, you do, as has been suggested, stand aside from this at this point until such time as all the options are gone through in much greater detail. And I am really pleased that we have agreed to extend the timetable for consultation until at the earliest June. That means it goes through a genuine, meaningful consultation process rather than just going through the motions effectively. And the final thing was partially tied in with this anonymous email, which some of us have seen, some which us haven't. The EIS, I think, actually put a briefing note forward. They held a meeting. I think that should have been bound in with these papers, because we do need to see the concerns which the trade unions and others are raising at this instance, because we don't have the buy-in of the staff at the end of the day. This just isn't going to work at all, no matter what it is.
Thank you very much for that, Director.
Chair, thanks for that, Councillor. I'll pick up on issues working backwards. Mr. Birrell has been good enough to coordinate the concerns expressed in schools from the various unions, and that's been the setup of the terms of reference for working groups. That a document detailing all of that has gone out to all schools on Thursday evening. If it would be helpful, we could send that round all councillors, and that will let you see that we're recognising what's been expressed as concerns and what would need to be overcome, any options. So we'll send that out to you. Second one is the bid. Sorry.
When you say all schools, could you say what you mean by all schools?
We've sent it out to all of the borough schools, head teachers. The difficulty we've got there, Councillor, obviously we felt maybe the second stage of consultation, as we shape things after January, would begin to look proportionately at how we involve those out with Dumfries Borough. But in the initial phase, certainly in the meeting that we had with the unions, we thought the initial most acute need to get concerns expressed were around the Dumfries Borough teachers. That's the secondaries and the primaries. Okay. Secondly, the dates. You're quite right, Councillor Lever. I was assuming that all detail was in this paper. You do get the detail of where things are and what evenings they are, but the timing isn't there. The one that you would most want to know is that the 4 dates for the secondary, for the schools, are from 4 till 6. From 4 o'clock till 6 o'clock.
Could we have that as a separate briefing note, effectively, rather than having to go through here trying to pick them out?
What we'll do is we'll take out the timeline section in this, and I'll send it separately to you. That's no problem at all. Okay. The bid that went to the Scottish Government was a 34-page document, because it had to have a basic outline business case to be able to ask for 20 millions or whatever. Of course, that's a public document, and we'd be happy to send that round all councillors. It was sent with a very heavy proviso, however, that this was subject to consultation and provisional. And I think I would make one other point there, that whatever bid we had put in and we didn't want to miss a boat. Okay? Whatever bid had gone in would have been provisional, subject to Dumfries consultation. The opportunity to bid for 30 millions was afforded by having an overarching bid. None of the standalone schools would have qualified other than possibly Dumfries Academy, because its condition B, but suitability is C. So the only school that may possibly have considered as a standalone bid would have been Dumfries Academy. Our view was, we tried to take a professional view there of the likelihood of success, was that whilst we've got 1,000 under capacity across the 4 schools, and given that the government is looking at value, we wondered whether a standalone bid for the academy would have been successful. We were also really clear that it didn't feel as if it was in line with policy direction of a solution for the whole town. So we did what we thought was the right thing. You would also only have been able to bid for about £6 million. This one we bid for leveraging in the maximum amount of money. Now, because of the criteria, it is clear that they won't give us the money for the 4 schools, but they were prepared to give us the money for the aspect of the senior phase school, but we would try to use innovation to bring more money in. However, that's conditional. Any bid would have been conditional. We're comfortable, I think, that we at least got the bid in that leveraged in the most possible money, given that we might have to go back if things don't go forward. The last bit about me stepping aside, I would love to do that. That would be fantastic, and I'm really quite hopeful that in the second phase of consultation other people take things forward. I think it would be not right if I didn't go into the 4 schools over the next 2 weeks and give the teachers a chance to tell me what they think. Other than that, you can see very clearly that the consultation is based on Education Committee and then I believe full council making decisions.
Yes?
Yeah, I mean, you're saying that, you've obviously made statements out in the public, you've made statements to us about your preferred options and that, and I think that's actually, it's not an unbiased opinion by any means, it's a biased opinion that you're putting forward through this consultation, and I think it's wrong. You've made your position of support for Dumfries Learning Town clear, you're too close to it, and I think you should stand down from any further involvement in the process before the integrity of the actual consultation is corrupted anymore. So I think also within the consultation, I think that staff must show an unbiased opinion of being to one in the education department, and it certainly wasn't unbiased opinions that was coming from the staff. Now, admittedly, that was to councillors, but I've also had reference back about the other consultation where staff are actually not putting forward unbiased opinions, they're actually leading people down a certain route rather than giving them the information and letting them make their own minds up. So I think on that basis, I do think it's advisable that you do step down from any further involvement in the consultation process to make it, it is being perceived as a corrupted process just now, and I think by you standing down, it will make it more tenable for the future of any meaningful consultation. On the business, on the case of the bid, I've got details here about the Education Committee, how it met on the 5th of July, and why didn't he make mention of the funding bids which he submitted on the 27th of July? Are you saying that, you didn't know about that at the time and you didn't know you were submitting a bid at that time? More importantly, a decision on what to bid for should have been reported to members. You didn't report that to members. Why didn't this happen? Why were councillors kept in the dark? And I've said this before, we read this in a press release from the council welcoming the government announcement, and that's the first that councillors heard about it. Can you give us detail about some of these questions as well? The paper states in 3.2.1, I think it is, a conditional standalone bid for one replacement school in Dumfries would not have aligned fully with the policy direction and appeared unlikely to be successful in terms of the criteria. You've reiterated that, you've reinforced that a few times. The policy of this council is to retain the existing 4 schools. It's utter nonsense to say that replacing one school with a new build, for example, a new Dumfries High School, using government funding, if the government are only willing to fund new buildings and then using council funds to upgrade the other 3, is somehow against council policy. It is not. You say in the paper that such a bid was unlikely, and you've reinforced that again and reiterated again, that a bid was unlikely to be successful. Does it mean, did you mean that you didn't make a bid to replace an existing school with a new build and only bid for a new school if it was built at the Crichton? And if so, why not?
Chair, okay. Right. The criteria for making a bid says that only schools in condition C would be considered, or by exception, schools with condition B, where suitability is poor, might be considered. Okay? Dumfries High School is B and B, so it couldn't be considered. So purely professionally, based on the paperwork we had, the only school that could possibly have been considered would have been Dumfries Academy. If we had gone for Dumfries Academy, the maximum level of funding, now it's a school with less than 600, I think, at the moment, the maximum level of funding we could have bid for may well have been between 5 and 6 million, I think, right? Okay. The professional discussion around how we might leverage in conditionally the highest possible level of funding, and in terms of policy direction, which we believed to be a whole council improvement and whole of Dumfries improvement, which is what Councillor Nicholson is saying, we believed to be best served by a bid which we could ask for 30 millions to try to do everything. And that's what we did. It's all conditional, regardless. So we could have been in a position where we've been offered 6 millions conditionally, or possibly 30 million, as it is, it's probably 18 to 20 millions conditionally, and we're in a stronger position there, because depending on what you do, we can go back. That was the thinking around that. On the issue of me stepping down, I don't know if councillors demand that I step down from this process, then that's fine.
Okay, thank you. I think I'd just like to come in on that very point. I was slightly uncomfortable by some of the language that's been used by Councillor Nicholson. I don't believe that this consultation process has been corrupted. As he has stated, I think it has been perhaps slightly delayed and slightly unfortunate that we had a Scottish Government announcement which set the hairs running before the consultation had even properly started. I think, as Mr Birrell has already said, we now have a very good, robust consultation process in place which will take us through to next year when we will report back to committee again. I believe that the Director of Education is absolutely the best person to lead on a review of Dumfries Learning Town, and I would defend his right to do that and have absolute faith in him and his staff. I have now Councillor Brodie.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I think it's quite preposterous to suggest that the Director should stand aside in this process. He has shown professional leadership to the committee. At the end of the day, it will be up to the Council to decide whether we accept his recommendation, accept what's been put before us. But there's a number of options still there. There's a huge consultation process underway, and I think we should get on with it and listen to what all the people involved have to say.
Just on your comments there, what I said was and I'll read it out. The consultation would be compromised. It's perceived the corruption that has been corrupted within that, and before the integrity of the consultation is perceived to be corrupted even more, I think the Director shouldn't take. The Director himself has admitted he's handled it wrong. He's admitted he's handled the consultation process wrong. So I'm not saying anything the Director hadn't said.
Councillor Nicholson, thank you. You've already...
No, I'm clarifying you. Don't make assumptions about what I say. I've said, and if the recording will record that.
Nicholson, you've made your points very clearly. You used the word corrupted twice and asked the Director to step aside. I was clarifying a point. Do we have any other speakers on this? If not, we'll move to the recommendations. No? Are we happy to agree the recommendations at 2.1, 2.2, 2.3, 2.4, and 2.5? Councillor Nicholson, 2.5?
No, you just completely ignored me there when I had my hand up about 3 times.
Councillor Nicholson, with respect, I've been looking round the room and I think other members will clarify that as I've read out recommendations.
No, other members didn't see my hand going up. But, it's up to you to notice that. I would like in 2.5, for example, to agree to receive a report to full council, not education. I think it's important that it goes to full council and not the education department. And 2.1, want to add, note that members were not informed that the bid was being made or the contents of the bid, and agree that the bid documents be made available to all members. I think Councillor Lever pointed that out in what he was saying. And in 2.3, I would like to agree that as part of the consultation that 4 public meetings be held in 4 existing secondary schools, and that parents of all pupils in secondary, primary and local nurseries.
We've agreed 2.3.
No, I had my hand up, whether you ignored me or not, and if you're not going through a democratic process...
I'm sorry, we're on 2.5 and I'm very happy to take some of the changes if you could read them back to me, but we've already agreed 2.1 to 2.4 without dissent.
No,
so
we didn't agree without dissent, and I want my dissent recorded that that you are not taking place. Yes.
I looked around the room specifically for an extended period of time on each recommendation.
I did put my hand up. You maybe didn't see it, and I'll give you that. But I did put my hand up on a number of occasions, and you didn't.
We're on 2.5, Councillor Nicholson.
I mean, you rattled through those 5 recommendations in about 10 seconds. Now, an item as important as this, I think you should allow us to actually put forward, any amendments to any of those recommendations. You can't just actually judge this on 10 seconds. I know you're looking around the room, but I mean, you should allow us to actually make, amendments to the recommendations.
Marshall, I appreciate that. I specifically said 2.1, and then I scanned the room. There was no dissent. I said agreed, and then I moved to 2.2. You made no indication until 2.5 that you wished to speak. I was very, very careful about that. So we are on 2.5.
Sorry, Chair, can we have a governance on this, please, because it's going...
Chair, can I ask for this recording to be shown, and then you'll see my hand going up?
Claire, could we have some governance advice on this, please?
Chairman, you did ask if there was any dissent from any of the decisions, and between item 2.4 and 2.5, Councillor Nicholson tried to make a point. So I would say my advice would be that recommendations 2.1, 2.2 and 2.3 have already been agreed.
So we move to 2.4. Are we happy to agree 2.4? Councillor Nicholson.
Which one are you on now? You went to 2.5?
2.4. I've just taken advice from my governance officer, and we're on 2.4.
2.4.
Councillor Marshall.
I think on the consultation process, a little bit concerned about the consultation process. If you remember back a couple of meetings ago, basically we said that the original consultation process was too early, was not enough, and you've actually changed your mind now, but we got voted down on that. But just on the consultation process, this is a wider issue than just Dumfries, and I noticed in the consultation document that Dumfries Nistil Area Committee is not even identified as a key stakeholder. It's a facility to actually have a public meeting. I think not only should Nistil Area Committee be a key stakeholder, but the other 3 area committees should also be involved in the consultation process. It has an indirect effect on that, and if you don't actually agree to that, then you'll get separate requests from the area committees. It's about Dumfries, but it's also about education generally in Dumfries and Galloway, and I think they should be included in the consultation process.
Just for clarity, is this at 2.4 or at 2.5? Have we agreed 2.4?
No. It's 2.4, sorry. It's on the consultation process and the plan.
Okay, that's fine. I'll let the director come in there.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Yeah, the plan had been that this first phase of consultation up to Christmas would help shape the next phase. And I think that, and indeed, regardless of what's said in the first phase, we were already talking about in the second phase branching out and widening the consultation out beyond Dumfries Borough. So I can confirm for Councillor Marshall we would see that happening after January.
Councillor Lever?
Just in terms of the consultation, we need to make parents and pupils aware that these are going on. I know one of the complaints at the meeting at the Cairndale was that the staff, or some of the staff, they noticed only went up on their notice board at lunchtime. A lot of parents weren't aware it was on. It was actually held on Halloween as well, so a lot of parents couldn't come to the meeting. So can we have a commitment to actually write to the parents of all the feeder primaries to inform that there is going to be a meeting held at that particular secondary school to ensure that as many people come along as possible to attend?
Okay, Director.
Again, just for clarification, my understanding is for the public evening, that was arranged fairly quickly and after calls from Nithsdale Council Area Committee. It was organised through Community Services. I know it was in the newspaper, for example, on Friday, a notice of it. That was 3 or 4 days beforehand. It was unfortunate that it was arranged. I think it was very limited in terms of dates, and it was unfortunate it was arranged on Halloween night. There's no doubt about that. On the parents' evenings, we've written already to parent council chairs to say that there will be 2 nights specifically for parents, which is the 4th and 5th of December. But we'll also send that out to the schools and ask them to put it through the school bags to make sure they know that they're aware of those. And those are specifically for parents on the 4th and 5th of December. The ones over the next fortnight are specifically for teachers. In terms of the earlier discussion about my own involvement, I want to be clear that I am seeking to pull out of leading from the consultation. The meeting with the teachers over the next fortnight is more about information and clarification around some of the questions that are around, and I won't be proposing anything. I'm comfortable that I'm able to do that because it's information and teachers want to hear straight from the horse's mouth to some extent. But after that, I'm very happy to allow others to take the lead in this. So hopefully that's a reasonable middle ground that we'll be taking there, and I hope that's acceptable.
Thank you for that clarification. We were at, yeah, I think we're getting back into debate again. And
just in terms of using the school bags, I mean, I'm still a parent, but I've been a parent.
Can we go
I think the problem with,
please?
I appreciate that, but we've had the debate. We've now moved to the recommendations. I'm sure the Director will be very happy to speak with you off record any time that you choose on any of these subjects. With these reassurances from the Director as the wider process, I'm very happy to agree 2.4 unless somebody has, I said unless somebody has something else.
Thank you, Chair. I did have my hand up before and he didn't notice. I know the clerk noticed that time, which, then told you, but so you do make mistakes. On 2.4, under the consultation, I would like to put in there that I agree as part of that consultation that 4 public meetings be held in the 4 existing secondary schools and that parents of all pupils at the secondary, primary and local nurseries be invited by letter home, and the meetings be properly advertised and promoted by the council. And note that members, again, in the bidding process within that, in the business case, that members weren't informed that bid was being made or the contents of the bid, and agree that the bid documents be made available to all members.
Thank you very much for that. Do you have a seconder? I've already done that.
Point clarification.
Yes.
Councillor Lever asked the Director during the debate about the fact we hadn't been informed about the bid, but we did ask for the bid documents to be provided to us. So do we need to actually put that as part of the recommendation? Because I think the Director agreed to do that. I don't want to go to the vote because it sounds as though you want to actually, by leaving it as it is, then we're not going to get a copy of the bid documents. And
we're on 2.4 at this particular stage. I was actually going to incorporate in 2.5 all the points that have been raised by members and the assurances of further information to be sent out to members. I'm happy to incorporate them in 2.4 if you wish, but I was going to do it at 2.5. Okay, thank you. Move to the vote.
Chairman, there's a motion by yourself, seconded by Councillor Gilroy, to agree 2.4 as it's set out in the report. The motion by Councillor Nicholson, seconded by Councillor Lever, is to hold 4 public meetings. I couldn't write quick enough, Councillor Nicholson. Perhaps you'd like to reiterate what you had written down there, please, for the record.
Yeah, I agree as part of the consultation, 4 public meetings be held in the 4 existing secondary schools and that parents of all pupils at the secondary, primary and local nurses be invited by letter home and the meetings be properly advertised and promoted by the council.
Thank you. And also you wish to add that members, note that members were not informed of
that the
bidding
bid was
process.
being made or the contents of the bid, and agree that the bid documents be made available to all members.
Okay. Right. Chairman, motion or amendment?
Motion.
Councillor Davidson. Councillor Brodie. Councillor Carruthers. Councillor Carson. Councillor Dempster. Councillor Diggle. Councillor Gilroy. Councillor Yen. Councillor Lever. Councillor McClung. Councillor McComb. Councillor McKee. Councillor Marshall. Councillor Nicholson. Councillor Stitt. Councillor Witts. Councillor Wiper. Mr McQuiston. Reverend McFadden. Karen Paisley. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. The motion is successful by 15 votes to 6.
Thank you. We move on to 2.5, and as I say, a number of members have requested additional information, and I think to add to this particular recommendation, I would be quite comfortable that we are given the details of the information and the findings of the EIS and union meetings and discussions, if that would be okay with members. We requested an email update of dates and times, and an updated timeline, essentially, so that members are able to attend any of the public consultation meetings that they would like to. We've requested that members are given the bid details and the business plan that was attached to that. And I personally very much would back Councillor Nicholson's request to have the final report in June go to full council. I think it's absolutely essential. I think there's members from Dumfries who don't sit on the Education Committee. We have 47 members. This could potentially have an effect on the entire region, although it's specifically about Dumfries Learning Town. You know, it is of regional significance and of strategic significance, and I would be very comfortable with it not coming back to education in June and going straight to full council with members' agreement. Councillor Marshall.
Chair, I agree with that. I just think that rather than getting sporadic and ad hoc kind of information on an ongoing basis, I think because of the amount of consultation papers and feedback, etc., will be generated by this, is there not some way of the council looking that they can set up a separate area within the system that we can go in and get all that information and probably direct links out when there's new information added? I think rather than sending it out piecemeal, I think we need to have somewhere where we have access to and we can see all the updated documents.
Chair, thanks. Yeah, we've set up a public website that went live yesterday on a number of these issues, but in addition to that, I think what you're asking for, Councillor, is a very direct link to all councillors on all of the updates as they're coming along, and we'll do that, no problem. Okay.
So with those additions, are we happy to agree 2.5? Councillor Nicholson?
Thank you, Chair. I'm glad you've incorporated the dates and the times and that, and for the consultation meetings. But I think he promised that once before to, I think it was actually Councillor Smith at a public meeting, and he said he'd be in his inbox the next day, and it wasn't. The one thing I would ask is that, you know, these dates, these times are given to members probably after this meeting, because there are meetings being held as early as tomorrow, I think it is, tomorrow evening. So, you know, to allow, councillor input into that, I would ask that they be put out today.
Chair, again, as belt and braces, you've got all of the dates and the time and the venues just now. I'll confirm verbally just now the teacher meetings start at 4 o'clock.
Yeah.
However, we'll also put that out in writing for you.
And with that, can we agree 2.5? Yep. Good. Thank you very much.
No, no.
What venues? Where's the venues in the paper?
Okay. If you go to page 40. All right, sorry. If you go to page 41, we've got 14, 15, 20th and 21st. Again, I think in another part of the paper somewhere it gives you the schools. I do apologise, I actually thought that was on there. I'll just tell you right now. Okay, the 14th is at Max High, 4 o'clock. The 15th is at St Joseph's. We'll put it in writing as well, but just in case anybody... That will? The 15th is at St Joseph's, the 20th is at High School, 21st is at the Academy. Okay, I think it's in other parts of the paper, but we'll just clarify that to simplify it for you. 4 till 6, okay?
Thank you very much, Councillor Nicholson. Okay, and with that, we will move on to item 6. Okay, item 6, the GIRFEC Review Agency Placements for Looked After Children and Young People. Again, members, particularly new members to the committee, but I think also existing members have been looking for update reports on the progress of the GIRFEC review, and I know certainly Councillor McKee and Councillor Lever have been very keen to see reports in front of the committee. Pleased that we have the report in front of us today. I'm very happy to welcome Hugh Smith, who will obviously take as many questions from members as you can throw at him. Do you have anything further to add to the report, Hugh? Microphone.
Just to say really that the report indicates work around a particular part of a much wider GIRFEC, Getting It Right for Every Child approach, which is looking at a systemic approach to intervening early and preventing needs before they arise. So it's really a part of a much bigger picture that's being led by the Director of Education on behalf of Children's Services in Dumfries and Galloway.
Thank you very much for that, Hugh. Councillor Lever.
Yeah, I'm very pleased we are making progress on the GIRFEC review, because it's so important that we do get it right for every child. And part of my queries might be the problem with Programme Office again. It says here that there's a lot more background information. That was what disappointed me, was the lack of detailed information within this report. Had I been able to get into Programme Office, then possibly a lot of the items which I didn't think were actually coming out in this report may be in there. But I'll need to go into Programme Office, obviously, to see what we're actually talking about. Now, it makes mention of the lack of local provision. I know we are building a home residential place on Hardthorne Road, but I think that's only for 4 young people. What do we actually need in terms of fully satisfying our needs locally? Because not only is it better for youngsters to actually be within the area, but also what we're doing is we're bleeding an awful lot of money out of our own region when we could actually keep that money, those jobs and those children within our area. So what, in an ideal world, would you see as being the need within the area? I noticed the number of placement, agency placements, etc., has gone down by nearly 30%, but costs have only gone down by 13%. Is there any particular reason for that? Is that explained by the particular needs of these children? And to what extent do we draw down on the best practice of the local authorities in carrying out the review?
You?
Councillor, if you managed to ask me the first question, I'm not able to answer because I defer to colleagues in social work who would have more information about current levels of need. I suppose that this piece of work has been looking really about how we collectively make decisions about those children and young people that have reached the point of where an agency placement would be considered. But I think your point is well made, and I've tried to make the point in the report that this is about having a range of local provision that is funded either through the council or through partners that's available to meet the needs, the particular needs of a child or young person, as opposed to currently is we don't have some of that provision and therefore we've had to look elsewhere. I suppose I'm not able to give you the exact, that level of detail in terms of numbers, but I think that it is about having a menu of provision as much as possible, which keeps children and young people in the homes, in their communities, locally, but also making sure that when we do need to use an agency placement, it's because it's the most appropriate to their needs. In terms of the issue regarding the costs and the numbers, I think one of the key things is we have a number of young people in long-term agency placements. That will possibly be through disability, through other issues. The numbers, and I suppose in a sense it's the numbers going down significantly by 13 is about the reduction in emergency placements. So we may still have a large number of children, young people that are still year on year using placements, but we're seeing fewer children coming in for emergencies, so that we won't necessarily see the big reduction in the costs immediately until we have some of that more local provision available. But what we are seeing is, I would suggest, and I think it's very early to kind of pin any kind of major hopes on this, but that we are seeing a shifting in terms of being able to intervene earlier, services working together better to keep children locally and keep them in their families.
Councillor Gilroy and then Councillor McKee.
Thank you. I'm very pleased to see this report here, Mr. Smith. I think it's excellent to see it. But what I'm quite interested in is your very last 6.3, your third last bullet point, and it's about the fact that you say we're not able to capture the experience of care leavers later in adulthood. Now, we spend quite a lot of money on this, and it's all about getting it right for every child. How on earth do we know if we're getting it right for those children if we don't know what happens when they're not with us anymore as looked after? And I just wonder how you think you can manage to bring something to us at some point and say this has been a success. Because I do remember sitting on the children's panel, and I'm sure Councillor McKee will agree that I once did ask how did we know that what had happened with the child at a children's panel had a positive and good outcome for that child later on? And we don't. We have no idea. So I think it's a very interesting point. I don't know how you do it, but you've highlighted it here as something that's not being done. I just wondered if you had any way of telling us how you would do it in the future.
I think we're being asked more and more to involve service users in our planning. And one of the key things I know colleagues in social work are looking at with some change fund money is about the voice of young people who are looked after. And also through the Leaving Care team is about those young people as they move on. But I think that one of the key messages that I tried to kind of capture in here is that the current approach that we do for performance is our young people at 16, what do they ultimately get in terms of qualifications? And it's a very low bar that we set, but it's a national bar because we don't have the sophistication to be able to measure where was the child or young person before they became looked after and where are they afterwards. Locally, we're looking at some of the information that we routinely collect through health and through education to be able to set them in that context. So where are they in terms of their participation and their attainment or their health before they become looked after, and where are they afterwards? So looking at routine screening points, as in, say, for health visitors doing their annual, not their annual, but their screening 1 to 3, and looking at some of the measures that we've got in schools now as well. So I think it is very complicated, but we are looking at this because the clear message locally and nationally is it's not good enough how we measure performance. And we'd also need to be, as you say, talking to people who are now adults who have got children themselves who have been looked after and getting some of the messages about what worked and what didn't work for them, because we tend to remember the stories that don't work and we tend to see in our papers the stories that don't work. We're not actually very good at capturing what's worked for so many young people that have become looked after and then have left the care system, have gone on to find jobs, to have families and to be very successful. So we measure ourselves against poor outcomes, which is that in terms of offending, in terms of poor health, in terms of homelessness. So it's capturing some of those stories, but also listening to those adults to be able to help us plan services that would better meet the next tranche of young people coming through.
Thank you very much for that. Councillor McKee.
Hi, thanks, Chair. Thanks very much for this report, Hugh. As the colleagues have said, it's very welcome. I've got concerns actually about the report. And governance assurance, there's no mention of social work. Now, if you should be working with anybody, it's social work. And this, what Councillor Gilroy was asking about, the progress of youngsters. A few years ago, we passed a motion in this council chamber that we would look to prioritise looked after children when it came to job interviews and that sort of thing. Now, this council is recruiting apprentices over the next few years, and it would be interesting to know how many looked after children actually were given interviews and how successful they were. And the sad thing is, there's a group of people actually working with these looked after children and getting them trained for interview and all that sort of thing, and job skills and all that sort of thing. And this, it's no mentioning here. And to me, a joint report going to both committees would be more appropriate than what we've got here. As I say, this looks as if you've done the education part, you haven't discussed with social work what they're doing, because they're working with them kids at the same time, albeit that when they're in care, social work have an input to their abilities as well as you do when they come to school. And I think a joint report would have been more appropriate than what you've got here, albeit what you've got here is good. There's no two ways about it. And we need to know, because at the end of the day, these children are our responsibility. And that's a difficulty I've got with this report. As I say, I welcome it, but where is consultation with social work?
If I could just reassure you that, and apologies if the impression is that this has been written from one service perspective, it was written on behalf of the GIRFEC Strategy Group, which is jointly chaired by Colin and John Alexander, and the Director of Social Work. It was drafted in detailed consultation with Jeff Dean, who is the service manager for social work, who has an overall responsibility for looked after children. It's a summation of the work that all partners have been doing around looked after children. So I just want to reassure you that it's not in any way an education report. I think it's come here because of Colin's role currently as chair of the Getting It Right for Every Child strategy group. So therefore, it has come to this committee. In terms of the employability and looked after children, I am aware that Jeff Dean is bringing a paper, my understanding, to full council. I'm not sure when that will be, but I know that I've been involved in a meeting where that's been drafted. I think that will probably be the next full council that had been asked for, so that should be able to answer those details. But just to reassure you on this, this is the work of all services around the issues of agency placements, because there isn't a single service that can solve any of these issues.
Thank you very much for that clarification. Mr. Birrell?
Thank you, Chair. It's a very interesting, valuable report. Thank you. This was, in fact, really a question on paragraph 6.1, just about the statistics. Do the number of service users in agency placements in respect of education services and social work services, are they separate groups of individuals, or is there an overlap between those in placements in respect of social care and education services?
I think one of the issues highlighted is the complexity of budgets. So therefore, it's difficult to separate out. Majority of placements are actually in some way co-funded in terms of the decision, but then a particular pot would be looked at to fund that. So these are separate numbers, but a majority of these would be a collective decision taken by the residential placement group, which is education, social work, and colleagues in health as well, that would be looking at the needs to say this is appropriate. So the budgets sit separately, and that's one of the issues that has been highlighted in the report in terms of budget controls and budget management.
Thank you for that. I don't currently have any more members indicating to speak. I'll do a quick scan of the room. With that, I think we'll move to the recommendations. I mean, as members have said, it's a very good report, and I think it was certainly necessary to bring it to the committee and let us get a good update. The recommendations themselves at 2.1 is just simply to note the contents of the report and progress made to date, and at 2.2 to agree to receive periodical progress reports. Councillor McKee?
Could they make that 6 months, Chair?
I was just going to ask that question. What is periodical? Would 6 monthly be acceptable to members? Yes? Good, thank you. With that, can we agree with the recommendations? Good, thanks very much. Thank you, Hugh. we move on to item 7, the Teacher Refresh Scheme 2012, and this is mainly a report to update members on the progress that we've made with the Teacher Refresh Scheme, where it's at, what it's done, and agreement to continue it into the future. I'd like to welcome John Thin, who will quite gladly, if he has nothing further to add to the report, answer questions from members. My God, silence, don't believe it. Go on, Councillor Lever.
Just for the sake of it. Now, I think the Teacher Refresh scheme has been a great success, not only for the schools, because it does say in here that it has actually been very positive, but also for those teachers who've been really struggling to get onto the employment ladder, and equally, I suppose, those who've been struggling to get off the employment ladder at the other end of their careers. Is this an end of the Teacher Refresh, or do we have any more freedom within the system to continue it into other years?
John?
This is working. Yes. Well, I hope I'm not speaking out of turn, but I would imagine not. I would imagine this is something we'd look to continue to implement. We've just literally, as we speak, we're implementing the primary one, which has been an interesting exercise part of the way through the year. We're going national with advertisements for that to see what kind of recruitment we can attract to Dumfries and Galloway. So I think head teachers are certainly speaking very positively of the impact that it's having, in particular in terms of delivering curriculum for excellence and that whole sort of new vibrancy, if you like, in staff rooms and classrooms. So I would certainly hope that that would be something we'd continue to look at in future years, budgets permitting.
Thank you for that. Director, do you wish to add?
Yeah, the only thing I would add, Chair, is I think in principle it has been terrific, but it does need to pay for itself. You know, we can't be coming back and asking for additional funding. Each cycle that we've done with it has paid for itself. But we certainly found on this occasion with the primary staff, we were not able to offer everyone who expressed an interest, because it would have simply cost too much to let them go based on the recovery costs coming through. But you know, as things move forward over the next couple of years, we would like to keep looking at possibilities as they arise.
Thank you very much for that. I have Councillor McKee.
Thanks, Chair. There was just a question. I noticed Marks High hasn't got any in this year. I take it they're quite comfortable with the staff and there's nobody of the retiring age there. Can I ask, has it, obviously you're losing experience with these older teachers going out. Do we think that's had, or do you recognise any impact of that in the schools at all, with loss of experience?
It would be difficult to quantify that entirely. We have lost experience, we've lost good teachers, we've also lost people who themselves have said they were really ready to go. The only objective evidence I think we can use, particularly in secondary, is to look and see whether there's been, for example, a dip in attainment last year, but there wasn't. Actually, attainment was really strong and had improved. We're not saying that's because of Teacher Refresh, but it gives us some comfort that the loss of experience hasn't led to a dip in attainment. As far as Max High goes, the previous year there were a number who retired, and it so happens in this occasion we didn't have applications. Is that right, John? Yeah.
Thank you. Mr. Birrell.
Thank you, Chair. I just wondered, in respect of subject specialisms in secondary, where posts were then to be filled as a result of Teacher Refresh, whether there had been any subject specialisms that had presented any difficulty in filling where vacancies had been created.
John?
On the whole, no. I suppose that the biggie that we've had, which is a national picture, is filling home economics posts. That has proven a bit of a challenge for us all in terms of being able to recruit. I do know that we ensured that we brought a trainee down this year who has a home economics background to try and make sure that we were building continuity and sustainability in the future. But thereafter, head teachers were asked to make a business case in terms of what they were looking to replace to ensure that they continue to have the full blanket of courses and subject choices for young people, and that's what the business case was made on. So, you know, there has been continuity in that respect.
Thank you for that. I have Councillor McComb and then Councillor Marshall and Councillor Nicholson.
Thanks, Chair. Just a question in relation to the primary sector. Why is it that so few teachers in the Wigtown area seem to require refreshment?
It's just...
Careful how you answer this.
Because they get that on a daily basis. Every day they wake up, they feel refreshed because they live in Wigtonshire, I think. Which particular section is that you're referring to, Ken? Right. Again, John might be able to confirm this for us, but really that was based on the number of applicants and secondly the financial case for it. So for example, it may be that there might have been a lot of applicants from Wigtonshire who were only 55 and for whom it would have been too expensive to offer the retirement package. So it was really based, particularly because in these cases it was straightforward primary teachers who might have been at the top of their scale replaced by a primary teacher coming in lower down on the scale. If it was too expensive in terms of the council letting somebody go, we couldn't make the offer. So it would be relating to that more than anything.
Does that satisfy you? Yep, good. Okay, Councillor Marshall and then Councillor Nicholson.
Thanks. I think if you look at 3.9, I think one of the worrying stats is that we can only actually give 1 out of every 10 applications, that actually go. So it's about, the 9 out of 10 that actually, is that on, I'm just looking at these stats here, these are the people that have actually applied to actually leave. And also, I see 103 physical education.
No, I will I'll get the director to clarify that.
The other point was going to, the other point I was going to make was with regards to, you say that it's purely you can't let anyone go because of the cost. Is cost the only basis, or do you look at where you're, the subjects and where they're going, and when the new teachers come in, do you try and slot them into, the relevant subjects that you've lost support from?
Councillor Marshall, just take your first point. Actually, that's a misinterpretation of the information here. These are actually the posts that were advertised and the number of applicants that applied for the vacancies following refresh. That's not the number of applicants who applied to go. The second point, I'll go back to the point I made earlier. It's about the business case, and it's to ensure that there's continuity of learning and ensuring that there's a full curriculum and offer for young people. So that would be part of the business case that was made. Cost would obviously be a huge factor within that, but also the fact that there's continuity and ensuring that we've got the full range of subjects for the young people to still experience within a secondary school.
How many teachers actually apply or are interested in actually going? And it doesn't seem to be in there. It'd be interesting to see what that stat was.
Well, it has varied at different times from year to year. The current primary one, for example, we had about 55 applicants, of whom we were able to offer 22 posts, 22, packages to go. We certainly in the past have been able to offer most of the secondary teachers who had applied the opportunity to leave. It was easier to make the business case because there's quite a lot of conserved principal teachers in there. So, from the point of view of if in the future there was ever a need to reduce the workforce, depending on how difficult the budget becomes for the council, we do know that we've got more than ample numbers of volunteers to go. The number of people applying are more than the people that we've allowed to go. The other thing to say on your question, Councillor, about considering the needs of the service, there have been cases where people have applied to go for whom we could have made the financial cost work, but the head teacher or others have looked at shortage subject or particular needs in the school, who we've had to say on this occasion, I'm sorry. So we do try and take both things into account.
Thank you for that. Councillor Nicholson?
The Director's already answered the question about the impact on attainment and being difficult to quantify, so he's answered that.
Okay, thank you very much. We'll have no more members if we can move to the recommendations. So it's a very positive report, and it seems to have been a very well-received scheme across the schools, and I know anecdotally my own teenagers are very happy with the younger teachers that are getting in. If we can look at the recommendations, are we happy to agree 2.1? Yep. 2.2? 2.3 and 2.4. Thank you, members. Thank you very much, John. Okay, we move on to item 8, Education Committee Strategic Commissions, DGFirst. We have both Kate MacLeod and Gillian Bryson here to answer questions from members, and I think it's very important that we have this report in front of us, which sets out the agreement that we have for the commissioning framework between DGFirst and Education. We haven't always had the detail of what the commissions look like, and I think that it's really useful for members to see how the commissions are put together and how the relationship between the two departments work. We have a report in front of us. I'm happy to take questions from members if Gillian or Kate have nothing further to add to the report.
No, thank you. I think it's important to note that there's improved performance across the piece in both primary and secondary, and Kate and I are not complacent about this and continue to work with particularly the secondary schools to increase attainment, but happy to take any questions.
Members? Councillor Carson.
Thank you, Chair. It was a point on the uptake or the targets for school meals on page 77. The target was 43%. Is there any indication of what the uptake actually is?
Yes, thank you. It's a very good point, Councillor, in that this is the operational arrangement between DGFirst and Education Committee as from financial year April 12 to 13. So this is actually in operation. It was therefore written with last year's targets. So the targets are 10-11 targets, and Kate and I have agreed to make sure that the data that became available in June, which is this year's target, which is in the table, will be the targets for next year. So our current year targets are actually about 3.5% greater than that in secondary and about 2.5% greater in primary. So it really is just the mismatch between the two financial years, and we'll make sure that's reviewed the next time we come back to committee. Thank you.
Councillor Carson.
Thanks. Just on the back of that, one of the recommendations to receive a report in March, what I would be interested in is actually what the demand for the meals are. I'm very aware that the school meals have improved immeasurably, and there's a far higher demand for them. What my concerns are that we're not actually able to provide school meals for all the pupils that want to take them, and I'm aware of a couple of schools where there's issues where there's not the places and dining rooms, or not the room in the schools to provide those meals, and some children have to go without and are unfortunately forced down the street to eat their cream buns and chips and Coca-Cola. Or partake of unhealthy foods from vending vans that are unfortunately parked at school gates. One of the council priorities is that we provide a good start in life for all our children. Part of the report I would like to see is just how many we can actually cater for, because it's very well having a target of 43%, but if the demand's actually 75%, and the limiting factor is the accommodation in terms of dining room space, that would be of some concern.
Thank you. Yes, I certainly would. I'll ask Kate to come back in any specific schools, but we work to increase the uptake in all schools, and if there's a physical limit or barrier to that, there are management arrangements we can put in place to ensure a numbers of sittings and alternative provision. With regards to the competition from outside vending vans, I'm sure Kate would like to elaborate on our new emergency vans that we have in place in some schools.
Thank you, Councillor. You'll see within the report and in the Commission that we have implemented individual school action plans. So I'm happy to have the discussion out of committee if there's two schools that you have an issue with, that we can work with the catering staff and our colleagues in education to try and improve the provision there. We were successful through our strategy at looking at uptake in secondary schools to to increase the uptake there. Members of this committee made the decision that we could change and re-engineer the service there, which has been very beneficial. Part of the debate at that time was alternative provision. So through working with our colleagues in emergency planning, we have secured mobile catering vehicles, 3 of them. It says in the report 2, but there was actually funding for 3. We've agreed with colleagues in education that we will place these in strategically placed, lower performing secondary schools, but we will provide the nutritionally balanced food and the same menu as we provide in the canteen, which gives the kids the alternative to walk out and have lunch outside. And say we've agreed with our colleagues in education where we'll situate 2 of these vans, and we'll have a discussion on the 3rd one.
Actually sounds very positive. Presumably that you'll feed back in a future report on your findings with that.
We will feed back, and I should say, Chair, that these vehicles will also be used in emergency planning should we have power outages, etc., that we need to emergency feed across the area. And we'll agree a protocol for that as we go forward.
Excellent, good. I'll let you take up the issue of the 2 schools offline. Thank you. Councillor Lever and then Councillor Marshall.
Yeah, it's good to see the uptake is increasing significantly year on year, and I must admit that with the occasions we had the chance to actually sample the school meals, the best meal I've had in the members' lounge for quite a long time. In terms of in terms of the free meal entitlement, what sort of proportion of uptake do we have of free meals? I mean, you know, there's obviously the welfare reform changes coming through, so that's going to put a huge strain on family budgets, and I just hope, you know, more youngsters are taken to what their entitlement is, and if there are any ways which we can actually hopefully get 100% take up, particularly in the secondary schools where it's now being extended to the mid-morning break as well. So if they want to go down to the chip shop or whatever at lunchtime, they can still have something nutritional at mid-morning.
Kate.
Just to say that the uptake in secondary schools, as you quite rightly say, Councillor, is growing with the free meal entitlement, and because of this committee decision, we've opened that up to morning break, etc. On the welfare reform, at the moment, Councillor, I can't comment on the impact on that because I don't think there's clarity on what will actually happen with the free meal entitlement and coming to the local authorities and the GE grant, etc. We're looking and we're keeping our ears close to the ground to find out what the impact will be on that. Another extremely positive one was the committee's decision to put in the P1 free meals that we've, for all P1 pupils across the region in the last couple of years, and that's helped to build and create and improve the uptake in primary schools through the other class years.
Thank you very much. Councillor Marshall.
Yeah, just on the school meal service, it states in 3.8, and it's also within the appendix at page 75, that the Commission and delivery partners at their discretion could actually impose an increase of 5 pence or 5%. I take it from the commissioning arm, which is the Education Department, that obviously any proposal for a price increase would come through the Education Committee first, as it normally has, you know, to actually agree that price increase before actually it took effect.
The budget around the Commission includes a price increase for this coming year. There has been no price increase in the school meal service for the last 2 years, and the Commission finances are based on a 5 pence for a 2 meal in primary and a meal deal in secondary, and an increase of no more than 5% on individual items in secondary schools. This is reflective of the increased food costs, as I think we would all recognise over the last 2 years. Food bills have gone up. If we had not put forward an increase in this Commission, there would be a budget pressure of around about £100,000.
My question, though, I say that basically in 2014, etc., then any proposal to actually increase that, although there's the flexibility within the agreement, has to come through Education Committee to ratify that increase.
Absolutely, it is 5 pence or 5. It's 5 pence or 5% in this year's in next year's Commission, and the flexibility to respond to food costs for the following year, but no more than 5 pence or 5%, unless in extraordinary circumstances we would come back to Service Committee.
Yeah, that was my understanding.
But to Chair, if I could, just to be clear about Councillor Marshall's question, what you're saying in agreeing this is that it would agree to the increase for next year. As it stands, the Commission, the way it's set out, would allow flexibility for the operational decision to be made. Anything below 5% or 5 pence. I'm just trying to clarify your question. That's what you would be agreeing.
Is that we are agreeing to 2 increases to school meals over the next 2 years, and so nothing would come back to it would actually all be taken care within the framework, which is a departure from what we normally do, because we used to actually agree an increase in the school meals year on year.
I appreciate where you're coming from, but yes, that's correct.
I think that on the basis that when we're agreeing increases in school meals, it's always been a contentious issue, and we have to look at the current economic climate, etc. I think that when we are proposing the price increase, it has to come back to the Education Committee on an annual basis for ratification, and I would propose that.
Okay, thank you for that, Councillor Marshall. I have 4 more speakers, and we can maybe pick that up again when we move to the recommendations. Councillor McComb and then Councillor McClung.
Thanks, Chair. It's the free school meal entitlement. We've obviously made progress in the uptake of school meals, but we can't afford to be complacent in this when over a third of the pupils who are offered a meal free are turning their back on it. It is still a very worrying situation.
I think that that's been well documented in the past as well, and unfortunately what we don't have an influence over is individual choice in that respect, and their parents' choice. We can encourage, and we can certainly put as much, or try and reduce the stigma, I think was the historic issue, and we've done a lot to do that, but at the end of the day a third of them still will go down the street, and it's very difficult to tackle that. Councillor McClung?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. It's a couple of things. Regarding the price increases, I'd just like clarification. It says from April 2013, 5p on the primary 2 course and a secondary meal deal, and a maximum of a 5% increase in individual items. Is that 5p plus possibly 5%? Because that's the way it actually reads, and it's the same for in the 2014. It reads 5p and the possibility of the 5% increase. And also, one of the vans, I believe, is going to Sederunt Academy. That is one of the schools that has a severe problem with capacity for children actually to eat in their canteen.
Gillian?
Thank you. It's my understanding from colleagues in DGFirst that youngsters tend to have a meal deal or buy individual items. They don't tend to have both, so it won't be a double whammy, if you like. So the price rise would be either on the meal that they have or on the individual items that they select. In terms of Sederunt Academy, it's our understanding we've been working with the school to look at management arrangements. I understand it was brought up at the Parent Council again last week, and that we're working hard with colleagues in the Parent Council and with the head teacher, looking at the setting up of furniture, looking at the management arrangements and the throughput of pupils, as well as giving pupils additional options like having their menu choices and leaving the school to eat their lunch, and now also purchasing from the mobile catering unit. So we are looking at a multi-pronged approach to try and increase uptake, and also for the free school meal eligibility as well.
Thank you for that. I have 3 more speakers, Councillor Diggle, then Councillor Wiper and Councillor Gilroy. Councillor Diggle?
So one of the barriers I feel that for the uptake of school meals is that kids are in school from 9 till 4 or 3:30 or whatever it may be. At some point they just want to get off the premises. And I think the idea of these mobile vans are tremendous. And one of the questions I was going to ask is, are they subsidised or are they undercutting other commercial ventures in the area?
Sorry, Councillor, is it the prices you're thinking we're going to subsidise? The price and the...
Yeah, are they cheaper than other commercial mobile vehicles in the area?
I'm not quite sure where you're...
Other commercial outlets for the same product?
Right, we actually haven't done that exercise yet, comparing price and price. What we know is that we will have to, or we will be selling the same product in the dining room at the same price from the mobile vehicles. But that's still a bit of work that we actually need to do going forward, looking at that structure.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Wiper.
Thank you, Chair. My question's also on the mobile vehicles. Do we have a costing for the purchase and running of these vehicles?
We do, Councillor, and I'm happy to provide that, but I don't have that information with me at the moment.
I'd just like to add to, I spent a couple of hours last night listening to people voicing their concerns where the council could save money from cutting back internet access in libraries to turning off street lights, and I just question the viability of having a dining room selling food and also the added expense of having that duplicated in a van outside the school gates. I just think in this economic times, where is the value in that to the taxpayer when you've already got a canteen selling the food? Why do we need to actually have the same thing duplicated outside the school gates?
The consultation we have had with parents and pupils within schools, and linking to a previous councillor's question regarding capacity issues within the dining room. Within the secondary schools, we've started pre-order systems. We have started, excuse me, the order lunch pamphlet in the morning. We can pick it up. Douglas York High School is now recording 192 pre-orders per day. They want to buy that product, councillor, and we would like to just offer that product from a mobile outside the dining room facility, so as the pupils and parents have choice, etc. Going forward on that. We will come back to committee March time. We hope to have the vans situated in place in January, and we've agreed they'll be coming to DGFirst Management Committee early next year, and again to this committee, and we'll report on the progress of that going forward.
Okay, thank you. I have three more speakers, Councillor Gilroy and Councillor Nicholson, and then Councillor Carson as a second speaker, and then I intend to move to recommendations. Councillor Gilroy.
Yeah, thank you. I'm looking at the Schools Facility Management Service, and it's the janitorial costs on page 81, and I just wonder if you could explain a situation where the river costs are on the increase due to criteria for recharging. Could you just explain that?
Yes, councillor. Within the commissions, there is this section 4. It says provide any reasons for overspends. There may be on occasion where within the criteria that allows schools to have activities outside the normal janitor's working time may increase beyond the budget provision. So that is where we have put in that there may be a cause to additional lets within the schools where we can't actually recover the janitorial cost to meet that additional expense. But that's just an example of what may, and at the moment, hopefully, I'm reporting that that is not, it was only an example of perhaps something that would deviate from the janitor's budget.
Thank you. Councillor Nicholson.
Thank you, Chair. Just on it, it's adding to Councillor Marshall's questions on school meals and the costs and that. These appendices that are being asked to agree to, it might have been helpful if we had the differences in what the framework you're working under now and what framework you're asking us to work under this time. And I think Councillor Marshall gave one example there, how it came back to committee before we agreed on the costs of that increase. On the performance framework in the school facility management service, for example, on building, cleaning, crossing patrol, janitorial, and playground and supervision, these are different criteria, I take it, than the ones you're using at the moment.
In terms of the satisfaction survey?
No. In terms of if you, for example, janitorial, provide a service that supports the security and caretaking needs of the schools, that includes litter picking where appropriate, and this may include playground supervision in larger schools. Provide a service where needs are identified from road services, professionals for crossing patrol. Does that mean that you could, for example, stop crossing patrol at a school if the road services say, professionals say you don't need it?
No.
Without coming back to committee?
No, certainly this is a continuation of the Facilities Management Commission that we had last year, so there are no operational changes put forward here, and we have not removed any crossing patrols, and we certainly wouldn't do that without coming back. The allocation of crossing patrols are undertaken on the advice of road crossing professionals, but we certainly wouldn't be looking at removing any existing crossing patrols without taking further advice.
Thank you for that clarification. Final speaker, Councillor Carson.
Thanks, Chair. I'm going to hark back at the capacity. Councillor McComb suggested, I was concerned at the low uptake of free meals, where it's below 50%, and really people should be taking advantage of that. I would suggest that some of it's down to the fact that we don't have the capacity to feed them all. And I do welcome the idea that these vans might actually allow some of the older children, because I think what tends to happen is the first years get the use of the dining room, and after that they're more or less left to look after themselves. I think we've got a curative duty as a council to make sure we're catering for first, second, third and fourth year, right up to the ages of 16. What I'd like an assurance of is that the report that comes back in March actually does highlight any shortcomings that we have in terms of delivering meals and what constraints there is with capacity. I would also like to see that there's some planning regulations or licensing to actually stop some of these catering vans outside schools. And it may be worth you looking at what the impact of that would be, and maybe the higher uptake of the council's vans, if you like. But I would have thought that a lot of the reason that the free meals are not taken at a higher percentage is because the kids are not willing to hang around for an hour and a half to get fed and so on. So I would like you to have a look at that specifically in the report coming back in March.
Absolutely happy to do so.
And clarification on, I think, the second point about the vans. I mean, this is certainly something that's been debated before about licensing and such like. Kate could maybe just give a verbal explanation as to why we haven't managed to do too much to date.
I will try and write my brain, Chair, to find out whether there was a report came up, because we did look at the licensing laws and restrictions on vehicles. And at the moment, Councillor, we can't do anything regarding that because of the way that the licensing are structured at the moment. But I'm happy to, with Gillian, put something into that report just to give further explanation and clarity on vending, etc.
Thank you for that. Okay, with that, I think we'll move to the recommendations. Certainly, Councillor Carson has highlighted that he would like some additional information brought back in that report with regards to constraints with capacity and uptake, particularly in relation to those that are in receipt of free school meals, and obviously the issue of external businesses around schools and the licensing. Councillor McComb raised the issue of I think it's page 75 in box 4, and I think maybe just the wording needs change there slightly. I think the "and" between the £1.80 and £1.85 in secondary, and a maximum needs taken out, maybe a full stop put in, so it's very clear that we're not double charging, and the same in the next paragraph. And with that change, if Councillor McClung's happy with that, I would be happy to move the recommendations. Yeah, thumbs up. Do we have any? Okay, Councillor Marshall.
Yeah, I had an amendment earlier that was seconded with regards to that, the 5 pence or 5% should be the same as the within page 75, and in extraordinary circumstances, any proposal above the 5 pence or the 5% increase from 2012-15, the Commission and Delivery Parties would seek Education Committee consideration. I think any increase on school meals has to come back to committee on an annual basis.
Thank you. Sorry, I didn't realise that you'd moved that as a motion earlier on. It was seconded by Councillor Nicholson. So that's absolutely fine. We'll have that as the motion. And then my recommendations as proposed as an amendment. Councillor Davidson.
Chairman, there's a motion by Councillor Marshall, seconded by Councillor Nicholson, in agreeing the strategic commissions with DGFirst for 2012-2015 that any proposals to increase school meal prices require to be reported back to the Education Committee on an annual basis. The amendment by yourself, Chairman, seconded by Councillor Davidson, is to move the recommendations as they stand, which include the financial framework in respect of flexibility and price increases. Chairman?
Amendment.
Councillor Davidson? Councillor Brodie? Councillor Crothers? Councillor Carson? Councillor Dempster? Councillor Diggle? Councillor Gilroy? Councillor Yen? Councillor Lever? Councillor McClung? Councillor McComb? Councillor McKee? Councillor Marshall? Councillor Nicholson? Councillor Stitt? Councillor Witts? Councillor Wiper? Mr McQuiston's left. Reverend McFadden? Karen Paisley? There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 votes for the motion. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 11, 12 votes for the amendment, 2 abstentions. Amendment is carried.
Thank you very much, Claire. And with that, the recommendations are agreed. We're moving on to item 9. Thank you very much, Kate and Gillian. Now, item 9, Revenue Budget Monitoring Report 2012-13 for the period ending 30th of September 2012. Obviously, a budget report in front of members for noting. I would suspect at this stage 326,000 is not a horrendously adverse figure in such a large budget, and we have 0.22% of the budget overall as an overspend shown at this stage. We have Karen McNish here to take any questions from members. Do you have anything further to add to the report, Karen?
I would just say that I suppose it is important to note that we are still quite early on in the academic year, that as I say, the sort of new staff instructors are just being sort of settling down, and we've still got sort of a lot of fluctuation in the supply through the winter months, so it still is early days and it is a relatively low percentage.
Thank you very much, Karen. Councillor Dempster.
Thanks, Chair. An observation and a question. The observation is on 3.4 or 3.4.1, where there's a join up between maternity leave and long-term sickness. Could we maybe have an illustration sometime of how we're dealing with long-term sickness to see that we are actually managing it down? Because that was always an issue with the Education Department in the past, was how we managed and achieved a return to work of members of staff that are on long-term sickness. And the other and simpler one that the Director might want to answer about 3.6, where we're hoping to move to a situation where we don't have out-of-region placements. And I just wonder how we're progressing with that.
The Director.
Yeah. Thanks, Chair. On absence management, you know, there are regular reports, I think, either to full council or audit around absence management across the whole council. Teacher absences come down significantly, and that's been a real positive, but there are still quite a number of long-term absences. We could have a wee look at how we might give you some statistical information around that separately. The question of 3.6, there is a conundrum there. I think Hugh Smith's paper earlier demonstrated that overall the number of out with placements has come down, but actually the cost to education at the moment has slightly increased, and that tends to be the type of placement. There's a lot of work ongoing there. It is very costly, but one of the difficulties is we're really open sometimes to events that we've got no control over. I would say that we're above cost for this year, partly because of people moving into the area that we weren't anticipating. We would then have responsibility for the out-with placement. So that's quite a difficult one, but that's why Hugh Smith's paper and the GIRFEC agenda about trying to intervene earlier, have placements here that are more sufficient, would make a big difference, I think. But it continues to be a challenge, Councillor. Yeah.
Thank you. Councillor Brodie.
Thanks, Chair. Just a plea for joined up budgeting. Obviously, quite a lot of the projected overspend is to do with commercial waste, increased charges. I think when the the charges were increased by the refuse collection service, then there should have been a balance in the rest of the council's budget. So I suppose it's a matter for corporate finance to make sure that there is joined up budgeting.
Yeah, I would agree wholeheartedly with that. In fact, I sought clarification yesterday, and our understanding when the budget process was agreed in January, and the increase in those fees and charges was levied, was that there'd be no detrimental effect on other services at the time. And it does seem to me that we seem to have adopted a bit of a budget pressure due to an increase elsewhere, and clarification on that would be very welcome.
I would just add in there and give members assurance that it is being looked into as we speak, and I am hopeful that that issue will be sorted out before the end of the financial year.
Good, thank you. With that clarity, I'm quite happy with that then. Do we have any other members? Move to the recommendations. Are we happy to agree 2.1? Agreed. And 2.2? Agreed. Thank you. Okay, thank you very much, Karen. Our final report, we'll wait for Dr. Bryson to come back in again. Okay, item 10, appointments to John Wallace Trust. Members deferred this the last time, requiring further information, and I'm hoping that Gillian will be able to maybe fill in some more gaps since then. I'm still personally quite unsure why this is with the Education Committee rather than this Dale Area Committee, and I would personally like some clarification on that, and then I'll open the floor up to members if that's okay. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair. At the last Education Committee, members agreed to defer the decision on two grounds, I understand. The Director was asked to confirm if, firstly, the Trust was the business of Education Committee, and secondly, whether it constituted an outside body. I've taken advice from governance and legal colleagues on those 2 points. Firstly, governance confirmed that it was a registered charity and therefore is defined as an outside body. And the appendices here in the paper give the original deeds, and within those original deeds, which I think do make quite interesting historical reading, they make it quite clear that the business of the John Wallace Trust is overseen by Education Committee. But perhaps Claire might be able to give any further information.
No, Gillian, I agree with you. The advice was given and it stands in the report as it is.
Thank you. Councillor Dempster.
Thanks, Chair. You'll not be surprised to learn that I don't agree with this. I don't understand either why we have suddenly changed, and Gillian and I have had a discussion about this. We don't understand why we've changed, because this council administers this grant for since I joined the council in 1999. It's never been anywhere except with the 2 ward collective members that represent Wallace Hall Academy. And I don't see the reason for change. And if you look at page 122, Chair, and you've obviously done it because you don't even understand it yourself, held by exclusively by Dumfries and Galloway Council, administered exclusively by Dumfries and Galloway Council for the benefit of Dumfries and Galloway Council. How on earth can we describe it as an outside body? And by doing so, you're actually effectively preventing some members of this council from representing their constituents. And I think that's fundamentally wrong, and it's fundamentally flawed. We have a housing subcommittee, and it's not an outside body. And if the only explanation because it's a registered charity, I just can't accept that, because it's still governed, managed, and determined by Dumfries and Galloway Council. And I would like this committee to recognise that and say that the John Wallace Trust is a committee, a subcommittee of this council, or this committee, and that the ward members that have represented their constituents in the past should do so again. And I'd hope this committee would have a sympathetic listening to that particular point of view.
Gillian first, and then I think Claire again.
All I can add to that is that in 2007, Education Committee agreed and managed the John Wallace Trust as an outside body. It was agreed in 2007 that the John Wallace Trust was within the list of outside bodies, and the advice I have, and I can only defer to advice from finance and legal colleagues, was that due to the constitution of the Trust, it is considered an outside body. And I'm afraid that's all I can add. Claire, you may wish.
To say that representation on the outside body, the trust, doesn't necessarily have to be from the area of benefit.
But it has to be councillors, Chair. Therefore, we are not part of it. An outside body, as far as the general understanding of councillors is, you're invited to join a collective group to represent the interests of the council within that group. That's fundamentally what an outside body is. Now, we're talking about technicalities here because this is a fund given for the benefit of a specific group, which are school children. It's governed by Dumfries and Galloway Council. It's owned exclusively by Dumfries and Galloway Council. It's administered by Dumfries and Galloway Council. Every officer that represents Dumfries and Galloway Council's interests are employed of Dumfries and Galloway Council. So in real terms, there's no one from outside involved in the administering of this grant. It's exclusively conducted by Dumfries and Galloway Council. So in that context, it can't be an outside body other than the terminology used because it is a charity, which is nonsense.
I actually have some sympathies with Councillor Dempster's sentiments. I think for me, because it's very much a locally based trust as well, which clearly has a benefit to a locality. Obviously I sit on Lockerbie and Syracuse Trust and Lockerbie Trust, and it would seem absurd that the 4 members on those would come from Stranraer or somewhere else out with that particular locality. I don't quite know where to go with this. I've got Councillor Davidson and then Councillor Nicholson.
Chairman, can I just add that regardless of its status, it still requires the Education Authority to appoint the members to it. And it's not a fait accompli that these members are on the trust or outside body.
Thanks, Chairman. I was just wondering how the outside body advice stands in relation to paragraph 4 on page 122 in the second impenetrable document, where it says business of the trust shall stand referred to the Education Committee, etc.
Chair, if we move the motion, is there any reason why we couldn't make a decision today that we bring this under the auspices of the council and therefore it is not an outside body?
Claire?
I don't have a legal qualification, Councillor McKee, so I would have to defer to my colleagues in legal. Trust deeds are tricky things and perhaps it's something we need to look at. I don't wish to defer a report twice, but I want to be absolute on this matter, and if needs be, take it to the full council on the 29th of November as part of the report on standing orders and schemes of delegation.
Councillor Dempster.
That might be useful, Chair, because we need a council's position. I mean, we can decide. I would have thought we could decide, although governance may well want to describe it as an outside body. We don't have to accept that, and we can determine it to be a subcommittee of this council and leave that as a decision we have made. But that's maybe for another day. We need to, well, to use Councillor Lever's terminology, we need to drill down into the description of committees and how they serve the council, as well an outside body or no, because each one of us, if we were to be asked to write down the description of an outside body, I don't think any of us would describe a council arrangement as an outside body. So it's a terminology only because we appear to have charitable status. And I think the other thing is, and I'm actually pleased that there is a sympathy applied here, because I'm quite sure members for Stranraer or Langham will not be interested in the Wallace Hall Trust, just as I wouldn't particularly want to sit in Stranraer Common Good. But I'm interested in this, and I would like to serve on this, but only if we can get rid of this daft terminology that describes it an outside body. Now, I think the full council is a place to take it to get a consensus, because it'll probably not be exclusively this trust that will finish up being described as something that I would suggest it's not. But I'll leave it to members.
Thank you for that. I have Councillor Nicholson and then Councillor Gilroy and Councillor Diggle. Councillor Nicholson.
I was just going to suggest to leave it to 29th of November at the full council and have a look at under the remit of standing orders.
Thank you. Councillor Gilroy.
Yeah, well, I have every sympathy with this. I think I don't think we can make a decision on here if we want to change it, but I did wonder if we had to have members of the Education Committee on it. I mean, could we, as an Education Committee, say actually it's far more appropriate that the ward members from Mistdale, not what ward number it is, I can't remember, 8 and 9, would be the appropriate people to sit in it? I mean, does it have to be members of the Education Committee? Because it's ridiculous.
Well, if we have an education sub, then membership has to come from the parent committee.
And this is a subcommittee then, is it?
Well,
as far as an outside body, I don't think so.
Decide to go. But no, I'll go back to service and make sure that we have this one nailed down to the mast.
I think, to be perfectly honest, if we've got to change things, it probably has to go to full council and just get it done. I don't think there's any problem, but I think we just need to do it there.
I mean, I see this as a semi-educational trust, which oddly on page 97, although it asks to appoint 8 members, the John Wallace Trust is detailed at 4.1. It doesn't make any mention of Ward 8 or 9 in the body of the report, but it does make mention of Ward 8 and 9 on the recommendations at the front of the papers themselves. So even that slight lack of clarity for me, I don't know whether I would be appointing 8 members from the Education Committee or 8 members who are the 4 ward members for wards 8 and 9. And I think on that basis, I would be happy to defer it to full council. Councillor Diggle, you had a question.
Yeah, I might have missed it, but I was just wondering what the capital value of this trust is.
I'm afraid I can't talk in detailed terms, but what I can say is that it equates to around an award of about £400 to Wallace Hall Academy for prizes, about £1.22 per pupil for the schools in the parishes of Dalgenno and Closeburn, and about £120, I think, if members correct me, as an individual bursary for pupils going into higher education.
And if it will help, Chair, and I'm interrupting, but if it will help, I've served it a long time, we disperse something like £8,000 per annum, which is the interest on the capital. The capital, I'm not sure, but I think it would be Stephen Hinton-Smith or somebody that would be able to advise you. And it's no a secret, Chair. I'm sure we'd be happy, or whoever sits in the Wallace Hall or the John Wallace Trust, be happy to have members be aware of how much the capital is. But can I just say as well, it's never been anything other than the 8 ward members, irrespective of which committee they served on, and they didn't always serve in the Education Committee. This is a fundamental change from any time before. And thanks for your indulgence, Chair.
Not a problem, anytime. I completely sympathise. I completely sympathise. I think... Oh, sorry. Councillor Yen.
Thank you, Chair. I was just wondering if we're going to make a recommendation defer to the full council, can we add page 122, section number 5, rules? It should be in the power of the council to make such rules as they think fit for the exercise of their functions under this scheme, provided that the said rules should be consistent with the provisions of this scheme. Thank you.
It's a very valid point, yeah, absolutely. So we'll defer this item and kindly request that full council... Oh, Mr Birrell.
Province, Chairman, but it does say in page 122, section 4, that the scheme of delegation itself does require that this be the business of the Education Committee. And that's part of the statutory instrument, which it would be very difficult to change.
Thank you for that. I think it will be discussed.
But maybe the Education Committee could delegate. Thank you.
So are we agreeing to refer this report to full council on the 29th of November? Yes? Assuming that there's time to do so in governance terms. Brilliant. Councillor McClung.
And also clarification, as Mr Birrell pointed out, that's a statutory instrument that's passed through Parliament, that the Education Committee can actually defer it to another place.
Okay.
That's a law that's passed through Parliament.
Okay, on that basis, we will seek legal opinion, and if it is correct, we will refer it to full council. If not, it will come back to us next time. Is that with the agreement of members?
Chair, can I just say, if you read 4, it says the very opposite. It says, it shall be in the power of the council to delegate any or all of their said powers to the said committee. So the council is the ultimate power, and it can delegate to the education authority. That's what 4 says.
Thank you. We will seek legal advice, and hopefully it will be on the agenda of the 29th of November. Thank you very much for your indulgence. Members, I have no further business. I hope there's some lunch. Excellent. Thank you.